song for a roller coaster.
I'll bring that up.
All right.
So good.
Yeah, I like that.
Really good. I was thinking about the beginning there. Beginning of the ride, I think start off, about a dancing. And there's people know something's coming, so I was thinking something with a good build-up, like back in the saddle.
Merci d'avancer le long du studio et de ne pas utiliser de flash ni de caméscope. Comme vous le constatez, le groupe est en train de procéder au tout dernier réglage technique concernant la musique de la nouvelle attraction que vous allez être parmi les premiers à découvrir. Please move all the way into the studio and remember to refrain from flash or video photography. As you can see, the band is making some last-minute tweaks on the new ride and music technology that you're going to be among the first to experience.
What a crowd, what a mob, what a ride, what an experience, Ali! Unreal. I was on the track going like this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, I got right about the gear, and I thought I was gonna lose it, and I felt like I was hearing going down! It's a beautiful thing. Hey, people! What's happening out there?
Listen, Steven, you know you wanted to mock
On
up
vient de
with
m'informer que nous sommes prêts à accueillir nos VIP dans la zone d'essai pour leur voyage test. I just got word that the ride test demo zone is now ready for our VIP guests. On dirait que le groupe va se balader. Pour ceux qui veulent les suivre en vibrant au son du rock'n'roll, c'est par ici. Looks like the band is going for a ride. If you'd like to go with them to rock and roll, walk this way.
Guys, wait
Back over lover, always hiding beneath the covers till I talk to you, my daddy say. Said you ain't seen nothing till you down on the muffin, then you sure to be changing your ways. I met cheerleader, was a real young breed, all times I can reminisce.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Magical Disneyland Paris podcast, all things magical and Disneyland Paris. I'm Andrew Williamson and I'm joined by Simon West.
Hello, hello.
Each Magical Disneyland Paris podcast episode will have a different focus, be it an attraction, restaurant or special element of the Disneyland Paris world. This episode we are focusing on Rock and Roller Coaster Avec Aerosmith. We will also hand over to you, the listener, and discuss your views and opinions. We're also joined today by our special guest. He is one of our biggest fans on Twitter. It is Alan, and it's Cafe Fantasia. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Alan. I'm here.
You confused me then. I was saying, well, my name isn't Alan, is it? Simon, your name isn't Alan.
I am the biggest fan, yeah.
Huzzah!
There's been no vote or any special research done to clarify the quote that Alan is our biggest fan, but seeing as though he's probably sent in thousands of lines of emails, we can definitely say that he is up there as one of our biggest fans. Since we last spoke, Simon, you've been acting and directing and writing, I believe, in Edinburgh.
I have, yeah. So I've been up at the Fringe, which has contributed to the delay in this podcast coming out. But I had a good time, and I've now spent all the money that I was hoping to use on a DLP trip. But, you know, what can you do? What can you do?
Do you have a Fringe now as well?
No. In fact, I came back and got a haircut. So I went to the Fringe and then came back and had no Fringe. Crazy.
Well, there we go. Alan, have you got a Fringe?
I could do, but I tend to blow dry it up. In an upward orientation.
Ooh. Very nice.
So there you
go.
Yeah,
I haven't got much of a fringe left because mine's starting to fall out. So we'll move away from the hair chat now. So yeah, it's great to have you on board, Alan.
Thank you.
Obviously, we sent you over. We sent you over to Walt Disney World. No, we didn't.
You kindly paid for me to go to Florida for 2 weeks to
of course we did, yeah.
research Rock and Roller Coaster.
So we want your opinions later on as to what's the same, what's different, what are your opinions. We'll cover that later on. Quick overview, we're going to go through the brief history, and I've only got 4 bullet points for this, because the main history of it is what it's like at the moment, really. So we'll look at the history, the current attraction, what we would think about will happen in the future. We'll obviously also go to your listener opinions, reviews, and then we'll end up with some sponsor messages and stuff like that. So, brief history. Obviously, it's located in the Walt Disney Studios in the backlot. It opened on March the 16th in 2002, and as we mentioned there, when Alan's been riding it at Walt Disney World, a Disney Hollywood Studios. It opened in July, I keep saying on July the 29th, 1999.
Interestingly, that was when Steven Tyler was 51, and today he is 69.
Today?
Well, not his birthday, but just in this current year, he's 69 years old. So it gives you an idea of how long the attraction's been around for.
Blimey.
Wow, that really does put it into perspective, doesn't it? I'm amazed he was 51 when it opened.
Yeah,
that's old as well. Well, it's not really anymore now. I'm getting closer to that age.
Aerosmith not current at all, is it? I mean, to be honest, it sort of vaguely was when it opened. But wow, that's. I mean, I'm an Aerosmith fan, but I realise now if I was, I don't know, the age that I was when I initially went on Rock and Roller Coaster, I'd be going on being like, who? What? What's all this about?
Now, were you a Aerosmith fan before you had taken a ride on the Rock and Roller Coaster?
I wasn't. No,
you weren't. So was it this ride that made you interested in Rock and?
Yes, and I now love Aerosmith. So roller coasters can change people, definitely. But I mean, I can't imagine nowadays, because I would have been, I don't know, sort of early teens, I guess, when I would have first ridden this. And I can't imagine teens nowadays coming off it and being like, boom, I'm going to look up Aerosmith and get really into them.
So what about you, Alan? Were you a fan? Do you like the Aerosmith music?
I do, but I guess the attraction did make me more aware of their music, definitely. I mean, I would have known my reference point with Aerosmith is Mrs. Doubtfire. Basically. I'm sure it is for many people as well. Robin Williams doing the vacuum cleaning. But then you come off that ride and then you start looking up their songs and researching stuff. If you're a geek.
I think you're with two fellow geeks here today, Alan, so don't worry. I definitely became a fan of Aerosmith. Well, a fan of Aerosmith, no. I love the songs that are on this attraction. So I like to say I like Aerosmith music, and I listen to other songs, but I only really, really like the ones that are on this attraction. So again, like you, Simon, this has kind of inspired me to download their music via Apple Music now these days, probably illegally before then. But but no one's listening to this part, it's fine. I think looking at the date there, 2002 is when it opened with the park. I visited in 2003, and I didn't even know anything about Disneyland Paris really at the time when I first went, when I was in my sixth form as a trip with my friends and my teachers. So obviously I was there like a year later, so the park had only been open a year. So to me it was, it could have been there for years beforehand. To me, I didn't really know that, but looking back, it was obviously only there for a year, really fresh. And then again, my friends, 15, 16-year-old, we didn't know who Aerosmith were, really. We knew Walk This Way with Run DMC, but that was about it.
I actually have a couple of things to say about the origins.
Yeah, go on.
Just that when I was on holiday at Disney World in 98, they were building the original attractions, so I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it under construction through a construction fence, and at that stage it was just the track, and they were building, the framework of the building around it. So that was kind of cool to see the original ride under construction.
The roller coaster, I mean, obviously you don't get to see it anymore outside of the show building, but it's a really scary looking thing. When you see, like, I've only seen photos of it being constructed, and there is actually an external version of it in a park in Holland that's a very, very similar roller coaster. But it looks terrifying. To be honest, I'm really glad you can't see it in a Disney theme park, because I'd imagine you'd sort of see this huge, great roller coaster that's, hidden away in a show building, often quite far away from the park, in terms of how it's, the directions angle, so you definitely can't see it. You can't see the side of the show building. You'd be so put off by it. It's a really intimidating looking roller coaster. Google image it now.
I think that's the thing with, the good thing about Disney coasters in general, isn't it? That so much of the track is hidden that you really can't see what you're going to get into until you're on the ride itself.
Yep.
So if you're scared of roller coasters, they're kind of a good place to start, aren't they? Because you're not intimidated by all the track work. You just see the station, or you see, a tiny part of the track outside, like in the case of Big Thunder Mountain or something like that.
I've said this on many a podcast before, especially the Space Mountain one. If it wasn't for Rock and Roller Coaster being in the dark, I definitely wouldn't be a fan of roller coasters now. I've been to Blackpool Pleasure Beach before, never wanted to go on any roller coasters there, especially the big one with that really big drop. But because it was inside, I was managed to be persuaded to get inside the building and take a ride on it, and I loved it ever since. So I don't mind. I love going on roller coasters outside now as well, where you can see all of the track. But it is a big difference having it in the dark.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a bit of a ploy, really, because they hide it all away so you can't see it. But then, of course, in Rock and Roller Coaster, immediately as you go into the station, you come out of the pre-show, and then bam, right there is the launch sequence, which is honestly one of the most terrifying things I think I've ever seen. With all the sort of like flashing lights going on, the countdown. That's terrifying. So scary.
Yeah, that's definitely like an intimidating sight, isn't it? As you come out of the pre-show to see the launch, and just to see the train static, and then just within a second, it's just disappeared completely.
Yeah, not 57 miles an hour in under 3 seconds, 2.8 seconds.
Wow.
But interestingly, it's not the fastest Disney coaster anymore.
No.
Do you know what the fastest one is?
That one, the race one. Test Track.
Well, that's not technically a roller coaster, is it?
Okay, so not that one then. What
is
is it then?
California Screaming faster than this?
I don't think so. The fastest one is the Tron Light Cycle Power Run at Shanghai.
Oh.
That goes to 62 miles per hour.
Oh, just pips it then.
And so Test Track, which is not a roller coaster, but that goes up to 64.9. That's the fastest Disney ride, I think.
Disney attraction, yeah, rather than roller coaster, yeah. Vekoma created this roller coaster, similar. The company created Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain.
Yeah, they did Big Thunder, yeah.
Yeah, so they've definitely done 3 in the Disneyland Paris parks. So yeah, let's go on to the actual attraction as it is today, because we've kind of discussed that anyway to start with. So the story, obviously, because there's a version in America as well, the story of the Paris version is completely different. So the Aerosmith, the band, are working with engineers, and they've created a new experience, a new music experience at the record company studios. Now, I've no idea who would go to a record company studio to experience such a thing. And I don't think Abbey Road Studios has the space for anything like this, so that's probably why they went to a DeForce Records. But after watching the pre-show, which we'll get onto later on, and going back to Armageddon, actually, I don't think we'll be saying pre-show as many times as we did on the Armageddon episode.
Oh, I hope not.
Because Simon's already had a couple of glasses of wine, and if we're playing the drinking game with pre-show, then I don't think he'll be able to speak by the end of the show. So Steve Tyler's there hyping up all the guests, is getting you to board the soundtrackers, which we're going to talk about for this new experience. The good thing about these soundtrackers is they all have their own theme. Now, there's how many is there again? There's 5 of them. I could probably tell you that I've maybe been on 1 or 2 of them, but after that, I can't even think of the different 5 like light shows and different tracks. Obviously, looking through the list, I've heard them all, but I probably couldn't have put them together really. But it's such an amazing idea having a different light and sound show on each vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Which one's your favourite one?
I'd probably say Soundtracker 3, looking at the songs that they use, just because it's Love in an Elevator and Walks This Way.
See,
good choices. Good choices.
What about you, Simon? Go on.
Well, my favourite song is Sweet Emotion, and that has its own soundtracker and a blue light show. That's Soundtracker 5. To quickly run through what they all are. So the first one is a green and yellow light show, which plays Back in the Saddle and Dude Looks Like a Lady. Second soundtrack has a pink light show, plays Young Lust, Fine, and Love in an Elevator, or Love in a Roller Coaster. I think it's actually Twisted too. Soundtracker 3 has a multicolour light show, plays Love in an Elevator and Walk This Way. 4 is a red and yellow light show with 9 lives, and 5, obviously the best one, blue light show, Sweet Emotion.
Now, I like the fact that Sweet Emotion is actually a live version, because obviously with all the lights going around and the trussing, and it does feel like you're at a concert, so hearing some of the audience screaming and the atmosphere that adds to it, I suppose that one should be probably the best one. But for me, it's got a story behind it as well. Soundtracker 1's my favourite. Now, I don't like green or yellow, so it's not the lights. But because Dude Looks Like a Lady's on there. Again, I can't remember if I've mentioned this story now, but I'll say it again if I haven't. When we were on Rock and Roller Coaster back in 2003, we were on there, and for some reason, the light show kept going on, but the onboard music completely stopped. It was just silent, and it was really weird. But it was actually in the middle of playing Dude Looks Like a Lady, and at one point, when it went dead, I just, as it was going down one of the hills, I just shouted, "Dude, looks like a lady!" And everybody in the whole soundtrack had just started clapping and cheering, and everyone joined in. So it was, for me, that was a really big experience that I've never forgotten, and that's my favourite soundtrack.
I think when the music stops, you realise how important it is to the experience.
Yeah,
when you ride it silent, you just you realise that that's a very integral part of the attraction.
It feels really hollow. If you've never ridden it silent, then lucky you, because it's because certainly the last time I was on it, actually there was no music playing, but you still have the stuff at the start, which was weird. But then there was no music once you got into it, and it just suddenly it feels so hollow. Everything feels so barren. You feel like you're really missing something. Honestly, it's a really bad experience, to be perfectly honest. I don't know why they're like, we got off at the end and we were like, the sound's not working. They were like, yeah. We were like, well, it's not right without it. You can't do that. I guess it would be like going to a concert and the band's like, nah, it's not going to work today. We'll play the lights together. Go for it.
It's interesting that they never do the parades without the music. I wonder how that would go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, just Mickey Mouse just waving, but there's no music.
Just miming.
Not everybody else dancing to nothing.
Yep.
The other version of this in Holland, the Express Coaster as it now is, that actually goes a little bit faster at launch because they don't have the music hardware on there, so they don't actually play any onboard tracks to that. I just wonder what that's actually like, because obviously we're saying here that it adds a lot to our version, that it's got the music and the light show. So I wonder, is it because it's outside and there's more to see, does that add an extra element that the music kind of does in the dark?
I can't really imagine it.
I'm just
would
guessing.
replace the music.
No, it's probably just very plain and boring, isn't it?
Like any normal roller coaster.
Yeah, it'd just be like you're at an ordinary theme park. There's none of the Disney difference.
Definitely. To give a bit of background to that, so in between Vekoma building the Floridian version and the Parisian version, they also built a very near identical version of the roller coaster in a park called Willoughby in Holland, which was originally called Superman The Escape, I think, and is now called Express Platform 13. And it's almost identical, except for, as Andrew was saying, when they obviously the trains there don't have the speakers on board, so they're lighter. So apparently they end up getting launched faster, so they had to make it's a rollover loop that you go into first. They had to make that larger to sort of counteract the speed and slow the trains down for the rest of the roller coaster, which I find a really weird thought. Now I don't know if either of you know how an LSM launch works, but I can't understand why, if the train weighs less, you wouldn't just launch the train slower instead of doing it at the same speed and then making the first inversion a bit taller to counteract that. That seems like a really expensive way to go about things.
What does LSM actually stand
in the
for?
Train,
Go on, tell me what...
synchronous motor.
There you go.
I think.
Yeah. And I read that,
I don't know how it works, though.
I read that they changed the launch in Paris in last June 2016.
I didn't hear that.
Did you read that? It was from ED92 Live, so that's the source. But I think it was that they used to have... I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm assuming that it is. But I think they simplified the mechanism, that it used to be like a pusher vehicle below the main ride rails that would, push the train along. It had its own separate track below.
And then come back.
And then they've just simplified it to be totally magnetic, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, because I thought...
That's what I understand, but I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, maybe that is what they've done. I thought it still worked on a sort of catch car. And then it's the catch car that has the sort of the magnetic stuff on it, and then it gets propelled along by magnets.
Because I don't think it was Vekoma's website, but there's a website all about roller coasters that I found some information on, and it talked about the LSM. It said that it replaces the traditional lift hill. It doesn't contain any moving parts. So whether that's been updated for the latest update or it's always been that case, I'm not 100% sure. But if it's magnetic, then obviously there's no need for moving parts, is there? Unless it's magnetic to rise it off the tracks a little bit, and then the car underneath is then going really, really fast, and then I don't know.
Maybe someone can reply with the actual true answer about that.
Yeah,
Which is,
and magnets,
Simon...
of course, being different to something like Space Mountain, which I think it uses a catapult system because they couldn't make the magnets work on an incline or something. But magnets is how you normally do roller coasters, I think.
It's a cable, isn't it? It's a cable launch for Space Mountain.
That's it.
Something that winds up really fast, like a piece of the rope pulls you up the hill.
Wouldn't like that to go snap.
Well, that's what.
No, I think that's why they replaced it.
Yeah.
Because it would actually shoot you. It would shoot you off to the moon, really, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
So we'll probably come back to the actual track and the ride layout itself, but we're going to kind of go in order. So we'll look at the show building first. Now, to be honest, it's probably one of the most boring show buildings. If anything, I don't know, Armageddon might actually be more interesting.
I was going to say, yeah, that area of the park probably has Disney's two most ugly attractions they've ever built in a very confined space.
I'm assuming you mean this and Armageddon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the outside of the Rock and Roller Coaster in Paris is a bit of a letdown compared to the one in Florida.
It's very cool in Florida.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's, it's nice and smart there. They have that huge guitar, but in Paris it's a bit like a kind of fairground attraction because you've got this...
Well, it's like it's temporary as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scaffolding and it's just a big painted flat. Looks like it's been done with like aerosol, like spray paints or something. And they've got a big CD, which kind of dates it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
very much so.
I tweeted a few years ago and actually saying, well, surely, even if it was just a really simple update, they should have put like a pen drive or something there, because most people, nowadays it would have been like a smartphone, obviously, because that's what most people use to get their music. To be honest, if the original attraction had a vinyl, then it would have actually still been in date if the vinyl was still there now, because obviously vinyl's coming back to a lot of hardcore music listeners.
And it would have made more sense with it being the record industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vinyl's a bit more timeless.
Yeah, exactly. At least they didn't put a mini disc up there.
Yeah, they do have a little bit of theming around. Some flight cases are outside. I believe there's one somewhere that plays music. I can't remember which one it is now.
I mean, aren't the Fast Pass machines themed as flight cases?
Yeah, the Fast Pass are flight cases as well, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the time as well, if you're walking in that concrete area, you'll see the barrier in front of the entrance as well, because it will be 101 every now and then. Every time I've seemed to have been in Disneyland Paris, it's always been down, like most of the major rides now, at least once a day.
Although it seems more reliable than Big Thunder Mountain.
Oh, well, anything's more reliable than that at the moment.
Yeah. What it really needs is a 13-month refurbishment.
Then it'll be off every hour.
So that it can break down more often.
Yeah, exactly.
At least it'll have cool effects, though.
Yeah.
That sometimes work.
When the smoke works, yeah.
Yeah, the cool bit about the show building is that it's in Studio 8 and Studio 9, because it's so big.
Where's the differentiation between those two? Is one the sort of the station, and then the other one's the building at the far end where the roller coaster actually is?
No, if you look at the Google Maps and you're in the kind of 3D view, Studio 8 and Studio 9 are the same building, really. It's just got a number 8 on one side on the left and a number 9 on the other side, just to try and make it themed as two separate studios, really.
Right. To make the studio park look a little bit bigger when it was built, they had to pretend they were sort of a bit more than there actually was.
Yeah, that's what it looks like from Google Maps.
That's called the Gravity Building, isn't it?
Is it?
Yep.
Yes, the actual show building.
Yeah.
Where the roller coaster is.
Yeah, exactly. The big building with all the main coaster track in it, that's called the Gravity Building.
Do we know why it's called the Gravity Building?
Because after the launch, you depend on gravity.
Ah, no, that makes a lot of sense, come to think of it.
Come on, Simon. Once you're inside the building, though, you look at the pre-show and the queue area, because even before you get inside the actual building, the queue area outside, there's nothing to it at all.
No.
It's just back and forward cattle gates. You don't even get to see anything. There's like a couple of trees on the side, and if you're lucky, you can maybe see inside Motors Action, the garage, or maybe see a few people walking past as they're coming out, but there's nothing at all happening there, is there?
There's a nice bit of corrugated metal above your head at the time.
Well, it's painted. Part of it's painted purple to go in with the theme.
A sort of faded purple that they occasionally touch up, but...
Well, this was the whole trick at the time, wasn't it? That they were saying that they were going for a sort of realistic studio backlot theme. So, you can't argue that it looks ugly. You know, it just looks it's supposed to be authentic, but of course we all know they didn't have enough money to do anything else, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, going back to the show building outside, I think it's near the fast pass areas. There's lines painted on the floor as if it's a place where buses and coaches can park. They're just really big, long white lines that looks like a coach park area. Like, was there originally the coach? There was like a tour bus outside, wasn't there at one point?
Exactly, an Aerosmith tour coach, I guess. Which I think on some Google Maps images or was it Apple Maps, you can see it parked backstage, like behind Discoveryland somewhere.
I love the idea that they've still got it, but they've just no, don't put it out. Don't put it out. It's fine.
They're saving it as a new attraction for next year.
Well, that'll be the addition to the studios tour.
Yeah.
Put that next to the 101 Dalmatians vehicles.
Well, I mean, when the trams start breaking down, they'll just put you on an Aerosmith bus and drive you around.
That would actually be quite a really good attraction there.
I mean, it would be a way of sprucing it up, wouldn't it?
With some groupies in the back of the tour bus. As the water's rushing down the canyon. Anyway, that's for a different podcast.
That's your own fantasy there.
Sorry, yeah, I'll come back to the podcast. Once you've actually got past the queue area, to be honest, the queue isn't like really, really long, is it really, for Rock and Roller Coaster? You're not really outside for long. So it doesn't really matter, because sometimes you can kind of walk on into the main queue area. If you go through the Tour de Force entrance, or the record entrance, when you've got the big guitar strings, which kind of need tightened up and tuned in because they're really floppy and really limp, hanging on the side of the reception desk. And then you've got the nice guitars in the case with the nice flashing lights. And the first few times you actually ride Rock and Roller Coaster and you do see them, they are actually quite interesting. But I suppose once every trip as well, it's nice to have a little look at them and remember whose guitar's what and what memorabilia is there. But after a while, if you're doing it 3 or 4 times on a trip, it kind of blurs into the background, doesn't it?
Do we know if they've ever changed these? Because, I mean, we were talking earlier about how Aerosmith is a bit dated, so I can only imagine that some of these items of memorabilia, however awesome they are, I wonder how much of the sort of Disneyland audience nowadays would actually know who any of these people are. Because I wonder if I would, to be honest. I can't quite remember what exactly is there, but...
Well, as you know, I take a lot of young students every year, although we're not going anymore because I've had 10 years of it. Yeah, I've had 10 years of it, and in the back of my head I'm thinking that my luck will run out, so something bad will happen next time, so I'm not going again. Also, the prices went up. It's been quite expensive at the moment, so we're not going again. But going with students, and I've been doing it for 10 years now, and there was actually, the first few times I went, not many students knew a lot of the music and the bands that were featured in there. But as years have gone on, it's now cool to know a lot of old rock bands. So it's actually becoming quite popular again, a lot of the old music. So they did actually know quite a lot. Some of them knew more than I did. That's
really cool. So Rock and Roller Coaster, as an attraction, can have a second wind now then?
Especially if you come from my
It's so old, it's cool again.
Yeah.
It's vintage now.
It's vintage
There's
now,
hope
yeah.
for Dinotopia. There's hope for Dinotopia.
Once you've managed to get past the guitars and you've kind of dodged the little children who are hanging off all the guitar strings that are hanging up, you get then into another kind of cattle grid area, aren't you? Cattle pen area, where you've got all the posters on the walls, and you've got that nice glassed off area with loads more guitars and drum skins and bits of... I should have really wrote a list of what was actually in here rather than just saying autographed memorabilia. Does anybody know what's actually in there? There was some gold records of some rock artists as well. But I wasn't really
recommend
interested in what was there.
YouTube walkthrough video.
So
yeah, I haven't made a list of all the items that you see there, so no, can't help you with that.
that would be great commitment to podcast research, wouldn't it? Going through, taking note of every single one.
Yeah,
that's what I was expecting. Come on.
Sorry,
that's why we asked our
down. I apologise.
That's why we asked our biggest fan on this episode.
To be honest, the queue is often so short that you don't really have an opportunity to look at that stuff. You can just walk straight past it, can't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll be honest. Certainly don't remember queuing in the outside area for an incredibly long time. And I find this interesting, actually. And I'd love to hear about what the queue was like in America, Alan, because my memory of the American one is that it had massive queues up to sort of an hour, maybe longer. Whereas the one in Paris, despite there being far less in the theme park around it, seems to not really pick up a queue at all.
Yeah, I guess it's to do with the attendance of that whole park, isn't it? It's
Very
in
true.
general. But yeah, it's odd because it is a major attraction, except nobody wants to go on it, basically.
Yeah, I would imagine also possibly you have the fact that it has a very large capacity compared to something like Crush's Coaster or Tower of Terror. But yeah, it always strikes me as weird that Europeans, we love our roller coasters, and Disney doesn't have that many of them. Obviously, Paris has more than most Disney theme parks, Disney resorts, but still, Rock and Roller Coaster, it is, as a roller coaster, it's a fantastic one, and it is good fun. So it's always struck me as weird that 10, 15-minute queue, maybe. It's not much for a roller coaster.
I always think that the coasters are maybe too intense in Paris, that they maybe overdid them at the time.
Quite possibly. I certainly think Space Mountain's is a tough one.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who just won't go on it. It's just too much for them.
Yeah, I mean we'll talk about the ride in a minute, but I personally think it's a fantastic roller coaster that's really smooth, and I don't think it's too big. But anyway, we'll get on to that. We're still on the queue. I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, in the area where the memorabilia is, if you are sad enough like me to put your ears against the other studio doors, you can hear some audio of another band and some engineers setting up. You can hear them talking about turning volumes up and stuff like that. Have any of you guys noticed that before when you've stuck your head to the other doors?
Funnily enough, I don't go around sticking my head against doors. So
Well, you should, Alan. This will teach you.
I haven't noticed that, no. But I'll look out for that next time. No.
Yeah, so if Alan doesn't know this, then obviously there's loads of people out there that don't know this. But yeah, if you're unlucky enough to be stuck in the pre-show area or in the queue, yeah, if you look at, I think it's Studio B or Studio A, I can't remember which one it is now. But yeah, if you're standing next to one of the doors, it's obviously a fake door. There's actually a speaker behind it, and you can hear a guitar tuning, and you can hear some engineers talking. So I think it's a nice little touch. Again, that's something that Disney do, other theme parks don't do. Just like they would have to spend a little bit of time recording that, coming up with the idea in the first place, and then actually engineering the building so that there's space behind the door for the speakers and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a nice little touch.
Yeah, track 3 is totally in sync right now.
Once you go past, and the fast pass queue kind of joins on, and that's where there's kind of a rush. People are deciding whether to go down the left side or the right side, and you think, well, you're from the fast pass, I'm going to try and push into you and push past you. There's some more posters on the side. There's a TV screen in there as well, isn't there, I think, that kind of says recording, and it gives you basically that the doors are going to open. You go in, and that's when you've got the actual real pre-show area, which probably lasts about 25 seconds if you're lucky, because by the time you've stood in the place, you're walking again.
Yeah, I always feel like the timing is weird there. Like they don't show you the full pre-show, you know?
Yeah, because the doors open and you're kind of out of it while they're still talking to you on the way out.
It's not like the Tower of Terror where you come in and you watch exactly the recorded thing from beginning to end.
Yeah, because again at the start of it as well, you're going in there, and Steve Tyler, if you're at the end of the people that are allowed in to the pre-show show, then obviously they've already started. They've already started talking. So if it's the first time you've actually came across the pre-show, then you'll have missed it.
Yeah, I can sort of see why they were going for that, because they're trying to give it a nice sort of organic feel that, you know, Aerosmith are just in there, they're working away, and you just happen to be sort of walking past them. But I don't know, maybe it would have been a little bit better to just have sort of a considerably longer loop that goes on with that Aerosmith thing, and just have that in the background of a queue somewhere, without having this bit where you sort of siphon people into a room, shut the doors, but kind of shut the doors at an awkward time, and then reopen the doors at a bit of an awkward time. And then, I don't know, maybe it's taking a bit of inspiration from the American one, where you're sort of, they almost kind of rush you out at the end. Alan will be able to tell you more about the story, but yeah, I don't know whether that's sort of a bit of a hangover from that, rather than having a sort of distinct start or end to the pre-show.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if in Paris it's just badly timed because there's not much demand to go on the attraction, so they they figure that they're just wasting time having you in that pre-show room. I mean, I've been on it where it's we haven't been watching the correct part of the pre-show. You just kind of enter the room and then the next thing you know you've gone out of the exit already. So it's a bit odd. In the Florida, the original version, it's timed more precisely, I'd say.
It obviously as well now that the studio, well, you can see the glass, and then there's the studio behind it, and then you can see that they're on a screen behind that. Obviously, when it first opened, the technology probably having a screen that big and having it that clear was probably really, really good, and that was the best they could do. And obviously, the technology looks kind of outdated now, doesn't it? You can tell that it's on a screen. Now, obviously, we know they're not there in the studio, but it kind of looks that way now, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, I've got some research there about that. It's actually an IMAX-sized film. They shot it on film. It's not digital.
Okay, yeah.
And it's projected life-size at 60 frames per second to give you that, to give you the realism of it. Yeah, that it's not like a film. And apparently, because it was shot indoors on such a large format at that frame rate, they had to use loads and loads of lights, and it was really, really hot for Aerosmith.
Poor things.
They should be glad they don't have to sit in Paris and just perform that scene over and over again for every guest.
Yeah, being grilled. And did you know who directed that pre-show video?
No.
Pre-show film? It was actually Jerry Reeves who directed Cinemagique.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
I found
a nice
out,
little tidbit.
yeah, and I found out the other day he directed all the film sequences in Mission Breakout, the Guardians of the Galaxy ride.
Oh, wow, so they're still using the guy then?
Yeah, still
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
Excellent.
So who knows? We might see some of his stuff in Disneyland Paris very soon. Who
Well,
knows?
exactly. Like Cinemagic leaves, but maybe Mission Breakout comes in, so we get another Jerry Reeves. Jerry Reeves returns to the studios.
Because we're not going to talk about the future section yet. But if they were to replace the theme of Aerosmith with something else, I think it'd be quite cool. And I don't know how effective it is at the moment, this technology, but some kind of holographic or projecting onto kind of like a modern Pepper's Ghost, but of an actual hologram of a real person. So they're actually behind the instruments, or they're in different levels of 3D, rather than it just being a screen at the back. Even though it is, like you're saying, 60 frames per second, and it's shot in IMAX, so it's trying to be life size. Just having that little extra depth to the scene would probably have made it better. But then it's just a pre-show that you walk through, so.
I mean, what you're
really
describing is exactly what they do over at Universal for the Harry Potter attractions, Forbidden Journey and Escape from Gringotts. They have live action footage of actors projected on one of these Musion screens, which is like a foil screen.
Yeah.
And then you've got physical sets behind them. So it's a 3D, you've got real actors projected into a physical room, a set.
Yeah, it just adds the depth, doesn't it? And obviously, to our eyes and our brains, the depth there kind of gives it probably an extra realism.
Yeah.
Than it just being on a flat surface with nothing behind.
That would be a great way of updating the Rock and Roller Coaster pre-show.
But they won't spend any money doing that if it's going to be Aerosmith.
No. Or Spider-Man or something.
So yeah, basically what they're doing in that show is they're just kind of talking about the loop, aren't they? It's kind of it's in the middle of construction, and they're talking about the story of it and going down, and he's doing his air drums and stuff like that. To be honest, when the first few times I actually like that, and even now I can sometimes feel myself having a little smile just because I'm back in Rock and Roller Coaster again, and I'm going to enjoy this.
But you see, this is where the Paris version takes a sort of detour from the one in Florida, and you could argue this is where it starts not to make any sense at all. Because in Florida, they're in. Well, it does in Florida because they're in a recording studio, recording music, and then there's a concert. And they have to leave. They have to leave suddenly, and then Steven Tyler's like, "Oh no, we can't leave without our fans." And then he asks his manager to, call in a stretch limo for all the fans to go with them.
Yeah.
So then you're on a ride on the LA freeway from Hollywood to the venue where they're doing their concert. But in Paris, it's like they're testing a new. It's like they're aware that they are in a sort of theme park environment because they're testing roller coaster technology. Do
you think that it's kind of because obviously they've got the Florida version was there first, and was done for a few years before. Do you feel they've kind of said, sorry, the budget isn't as much, so we're just going to have to keep it as a roller coaster with some lights in it? Because obviously they would have seen that the storyline worked really well and it was getting good audiences and stuff like that over in America. So I wonder if they've kind of decided, let's just downgrade it a little bit.
The theming beyond that pre-show room isn't that elaborate. I can't imagine it would make that much difference to the cost of the attraction. I don't know if they just wanted to do something slightly different so that Paris had its own unique thing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I think also, so the sort of difference in the theming is that in the actual station, it seemed like a sort of back alley in a sort of LA sort of, Hollywood recording studio, just, literally just a back alley. There's not really anything amazing. But then once you're on the roller coaster, there's lots of sort of quite cartoonish illuminated signs of like the LA freeway, and like at one point you go through the O and the Hollywood Hills sign. It's all very sort of big and cartoony. They're not big sets, but I wonder whether they felt that for a European audience, something that's sort of just so kind of blatantly American and all loving to California might not have gone down so well, and they felt that something that sort of put a bit more focus on the music might have gone down better.
Because they couldn't have really had them getting a limousine from a French recording studio to Paris, because it would have just been, there's another farm, there's another farm, there's another farm, there's a broken down car.
They could have themed it as you're taking the RER. You're taking the RER route from Mont La Vallée to Paris, yeah.
Past a farm, past another farm.
Yeah.
But the loading station, actually, I like the loading station at Disneyland Paris, because you've got all the again, it's like a backstage area, isn't it? Really, we've got loads of like lights that aren't plugged in. You've got flight cases. You've then got all the mixing desks and everything like that. And as somebody who does like that, and I do enjoy working backstage at different things, and I've done lights and sound before, and it kind of does feel like you are at a live kind of, not a concert, but it does feel like you're at some kind of big event. With all the technical stuff hanging around. But the main attraction to the loading area and the pre-show before the ride is the launch, isn't it? Getting to see the other coasters getting ready to launch off.
Yeah,
supersonic speed.
I just want to say, I guess one big difference is if you think about where the attraction's located in the parks, because in the original is on Sunset Boulevard, but the one in Paris is in the back lot, isn't it? So maybe that's part of the reason why stylistically they're different from the station on through the ride and then the unload.
True, because you're coming in from a different place, aren't you, on the outside?
Yeah. And in Paris, they probably wanted to make the emphasis on production and, a working studio, backstage and all of that, rather than like sort of the glamour of Hollywood.
Yeah, definitely. And with all the sort of, very industrial style sort of lighting rigs, and what have you in the Parisian attraction. Yeah, you're right. It does carry that the initial theme of this is kind of meant to be a working studio. I never really thought of that, but that's it does work.
It does. Let's go on to the actual ride itself. Now, we've kind of mentioned this already. I'm going to read through some of the statistics that I've stolen from somewhere. I can't remember the reference now. I apologise. So the length of the attraction is 3,403 feet. The height, so the biggest height is 80 feet. There's 3 inversions, and Alan and Simon are the experts on these inversions, and we'll go through those in a minute. Top speed is 57 miles per hour. The duration of the whole attraction is 1 minute and 10 seconds, and it feels like a good length of time. Obviously, you'd like it to go a bit longer, but then your eyes would probably run out of water, and your hair would probably fly off if it went for any longer. G-force of 5, maximum acceleration, 57 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds. The elements are the launch system, the LSM launch system, the Sea Serpent, and the Corkscrew, which I'll be leaving to you guys in a second. 1,800 riders per hour capacity. It says here as well 24 guests per sound tracker vehicle. So over to you guys. What is the difference between a Sea Serpent and a Corkscrew when you come across them on this attraction?
Well, actually, I believe it's not a Sea Serpent. I think it's a rollover loop. As far as I was looking this up earlier, and I think they're actually the same thing. But I believe the Poma call them rollover loops.
Yeah.
If we're going to be really Anaraki about this,
it's like it's either 2 rollover loops or 1 Sea Serpent, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. So in essence, what happens is you go up into a massive half loop, then you do sort of an upside down corkscrew,
Exactly,
and then go down another half loop.
Yeah. And really, when you're on the ride, you could think that it is just one inversion, couldn't you?
It feels like one inversion, definitely.
But it's two inversions in one.
Yeah, but it's very seamless. So the two inversions being sort of in essence a kind of more simplified version of a sidewinder loop. So you have a half loop going into a corkscrew, and then you have a corkscrew going into a half loop, and that makes up the two inversions. If that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense to you too, so that's fine.
And then the corkscrew comes later on, after the. I can't remember whether it's after the brake run or not. I think it might be.
Yeah.
But that's much later on.
So I mean, it's the same number of inversions as Space Mountain. It just doesn't feel like as many because you've got two that are combined into one.
Yeah, I also feel like Rock and Roller Coaster is a much smoother experience than Space Mountain. So to be honest, there could be more than 3 inversions in Space Mountain for all I care, because it sort of throws you around a lot. Whereas Rock and Roller Coaster, I imagine the show building is considerably larger than what they had to work with in Space Mountain, because that's a very constrained space. But certainly, it's such a smooth ride experience. I love Rock and Roller Coaster for that, because it really, I believe it's actually technically classed as a mega coaster, because it's genuinely very intense. But I really don't feel like it is when you're on it.
Interesting thing I found out is that it's 122 feet longer than Space Mountain.
Really?
The track length, yeah.
Wow. Actually, I guess though that includes, because you have that really long launch, and then of course the brake run at the end, which again covers basically the same distance as the launch. It's literally just parallel to it, next to it. So I guess that probably adds a lot to it, which Space Mountain won't have, because it's the sort of uphill and the station's more compact in.
Except Space Mountain has like 2 lift hills, doesn't it? But the Rock and Roller Coaster only has
a good point, yeah.
1 launch.
So, mentioning there the brake area at the end, that always freaks me out.
Well, in the brake run. So there's that sort of light at the end that just kind of flashes at you constantly, and you're sort of sat there waiting for the next train to clear the exit station. You're sort of there thinking, this is really annoying now. Like, it was cool when we came in, but this is just sort of blinding me.
Yeah, I'm just sat here now. Sometimes you kind of think, well, am I going to start moving anytime soon? I can hear the train behind me coming very, very quickly down the track. Especially when you've got first-time riders on with you as well. You can see the panic set in the face, thinking, have we stopped? Have we broken down? Because obviously it's only seconds, isn't it, that you're waiting there to move back into the unloading area. But it does sometimes feel like you're there for about 10 minutes.
Well, certainly after you've been racing around 3 inversions and whatever else, of course it's going to feel a lot slower.
One thing about this ride, I mean, a lot of the attractions at Disneyland Paris don't really scare me anymore, but I'd say that the launch of the Rock and Roller Coaster is still the one thing that still gets to me.
I'd second that for myself.
Yeah, the feeling when you're waiting there, is the anticipation of waiting to be launched it's hard to kind of get used to that.
Yeah. I feel like there's something about it as well, that because obviously Space Mountain has a launch as well, and that's also got a launch that's sort of quite visible. At least a section of it is. But there's definitely something about Rock and Roller Coaster. I don't know whether it's because you have a countdown. I don't know whether it's because you have people stood watching you. I don't know what it is about it, but there is something that adds a high degree of extra tension to it than even, say, the launch of Space Mountain.
And definitely the sound effects must add to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a sort of very deep rumbling sound. There's a lot of electronic, there's growling and blips, and there's all these sound effects that kind of build the anticipation.
Yes, they're also, I hadn't realised this, I always thought this was organic. There's a sort of screeching noise as the trains move around that I'd always thought was the actual roller coaster. It's a sort of high-pitched, kind of electronic-y kind of noise.
Yeah.
But I hadn't realised that's actually part of the sound effect that they use. So it's they build an awful lot into it, definitely.
Yeah, the different layers of different sound effects and the music do add a lot to the feeling, and obviously heighten your adrenaline and stuff as it rushes around your body. When you're waiting in the queue and you see the launch, I can imagine that all obviously seeing the launch before you get onto the sound tracker and getting it yourself kind of adds to it as well, doesn't it? Because obviously with Space Mountain, you just see it disappearing off into the tunnel, And obviously, you see it on the outside going through the tunnel, through and up the cannon, but you don't get to feel what people are experiencing before you get in.
It's a lot more immediate with the Rock and Roller Coaster, isn't it? You're very close up. You can see everybody's faces, and you can see, the expressions on their faces just before they get launched.
And you can hear Steve Tyler screaming down the tunnel.
Yeah. But it could definitely put you off riding it, couldn't it? Watching that launch sequence.
Just to dive in there, hang on, with the story that I've got, because you've literally just said it would put people off doing it. So I can't remember if this was the last time or the previous time when I've been to Disneyland, but somebody had got on and they boarded it and they'd got to the launch bit, and I think they'd got to the point even where the magnetic catch car had latched onto the train, and then this guy totally freaks out. So they don't launch the car, and the cast members go over, and they're very reassuring to this guy, and he's like, "I've got to get out. I'm not going through with this." Which is, of course, that's a massive problem when you've got a train that's loaded in, potentially ready to be fired at a top speed down a big tunnel. So they had to I don't know what they did. They must have powered down all of the magnets or something. They then had to sort of move the train or disconnect it from the catch car before they could then release the harnesses and get everyone out of it. Meanwhile, they've had to turn on all the sort of the working lights for the attraction. But it took absolutely forever to get this guy out. But obviously he freaked out so much because the tension was so much there that he really felt he had to get off. And then of course it took forever they have to cycle the trains around a number of times before they can start doing anything. So I literally, me and my dad had gone on being like, "Oh, it's a 5-minute queue, easy," while my mum and my sister had gone to get some crepes. And then an hour later, they'd eaten 4 crepes, and we're like, "Where were you guys?"
Surely it would have been easier for that fella if they just launched him anywhere.
It probably would have been. It would have been a cruel move by the cast.
He would have got off quicker, wouldn't he?
He would.
Yes, he would. He would have an awful lot quicker.
Because I can imagine he was all stressing out while he was sat there waiting for people to get him out.
Very much so, because I think the cast members were I'm sure they would have practiced these sorts of things, but they spent an awfully long time trying to work out how they could safely extract people from a train that I think had got that far into the launch sequence. It wasn't a case of I'll just stamp my foot on the thing at the back that flips the harnesses up. They were there forever, bringing over the manager and being like, "What do we do?"
Something else about the launch sequence. I was just going to say that that's probably the best timed on-ride photo at Disneyland Paris. The fact that they take the photo, the moment you are launched, and no matter what you're trying to, no matter how you feel, that photo's going to be taken, so you should try and maybe look a bit happier. It's about to be captured. Because my instinct is always to kind of lean forward and duck a bit and not to sit back. But then you realise the photo is going to be taken, so you should probably try and look up at the camera and look a bit happier.
No, we always try and pull funny faces and do all sorts of hand gestures because you're really locked in with the harness. You kind of can't really move your hands, so you're kind of pulling a funny face and then doing a really weird hand gesture. I mean, it just doesn't look good at all.
No, it is a challenge trying to get a good photo while you're being launched at that speed.
Absolutely. What I love about that though is because you really can't prepare for it properly. So every face you see is a properly organic face that they are not planning on pulling, which is always entertaining.
Good question though. Do you obviously they always don't expect you, but they always say it's best to sit back in your seat so you have a more comfortable ride. You just saying there, Alan, that you kind of stick your head forward.
Just instinctively. That's my brace for launch pose.
So what about the rest of the ride? Is your head firmly placed on the headrest, or do you let it wobble around a bit? Are you relaxed?
I probably don't put it towards the headrest because it's more. I don't know. I feel like it's more likely to keep repeatedly smacking into it.
Yeah.
If I do that.
Yeah.
But then you can come off with a really sore neck, can't you? If you're sticking your head forwards all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 5 G-forces max is that's quite a lot of G. But then, as I said earlier, it's a smooth ride. It's not like Space Mountain where if you sort of pop your head forward, you'll just be buffeted between the headrests on either side of you. I do feel like on Rock and Roller Coaster, you can get away with leaning forward a little bit, and you're not going to get so much smacking around.
I think Space Mountain has much more abrupt direction changes in the track, whereas
Yes.
with the Rock and Roller Coaster, they've kind of smoothed it out. It takes larger arcs, the larger circles are used in the track design, whereas Space Mountain has very, very sharp bends.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the track design of Space Mountain, effectively what happens is you they try to keep it with you sort of like doing a massive helix around the side of the building, and then whenever they want to do a show element, you sort of dive back into the building, so you'll do a sort of sharp left, I think it would be.
Yeah.
To then do a loop or a corkscrew or whatever, or go into another lift hill. Whereas, obviously, for Rock and Roller Coaster, they haven't felt that they're not in a constrained circular building, so the track can be much more fluid and wrap around itself without needing to just do any sudden turns.
Yeah, and I think the the proof of that is that they haven't had to change the trains yet, like they have for Space Mountain with the new harness. And I think that's just become necessary with Space Mountain. That it was just too intense. You needed a more comfortable seat.
Now, when they were creating and building Rock and Roller Coaster, I would love to have been part of the team that were involved in doing the lighting, because having watched some of the behind-the-scenes videos, they've had to set the lights, and I think there was more than 300 of them, I think, when normally for a really big concert you'd have maybe 150, so they've got double the lighting, and obviously they've got all the different scenes, they've got the 5 different colour schemes, but they had to apparently... because obviously they only had one viewpoint from where they were programming the lights, they had to move a program, set a colour, and then ride the ride a couple of times to check what it was like, and then make a couple of tweaks, and then ride the attraction again, and then make some more tweaks. So just imagine how many times you must have went through the ride just to check to see if the blue light was on.
I mean, it must have been a lot of fun.
But would it get boring though if you're doing that every day?
I think
Probably
it would get painful, wouldn't it?
You have to go through some military grade training just to be able to get your body to cope with the G-forces all day.
Exactly, yeah. I would imagine now that they could visualize enough of it on computers that they could program all of that in advance and not have to keep writing it.
Where's the fun in that? I
know. But just, the difference in the technology between what they have now and what they had back in 2002 when it opened. Yeah.
So I can imagine now that obviously with new attractions they'll have VR headsets, and like you say, it'll be all 3D mapped
exactly.
on the computer.
Yeah.
You just make the change in real time on your computer, and you can see it from any viewpoint in the attraction.
So I remember hearing that apparently they, in WDI, they will use motion simulators similar to the ones, identical to the ones that they use for Star Tours, and they'll basically animate whatever ride they're making, and then they'll go around it on a motion simulator to get a feel for it before signing off on the final design. I don't know whether they would have done that back in the 90s, whether it would have been too difficult to do the animations back then.
They did they did it for Space Mountain, didn't they? Paris and Space Mountain. They were doing that back then.
Ah, well, I imagine then.
Yeah, because that would have
been possible. That was 95.
That was 95, so that was that's in the Shoot for the Moon documentary.
That would be where I've got it from.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So yeah, for 99, I imagine that's how they would have done it.
On one of the videos that Alan sent me this afternoon before the show, there was a section about Rock and Roller Coaster, but I continued to watch it because I got kind of addicted. There was, and I've mentioned this before in a previous episode actually. I can't remember where it was now though. I'm sure it was in Walt Disney Studios. There was this virtual reality ride kind of that you could program your own roller coaster. You could pick the track. I can't remember what it was called now. That's going to help me.
I think it was. Well, that originates from Disney Quest, which is like an indoor virtual reality theme park that they had in Walt Disney World, and it was called Cyberspace Mountain at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that's the name that came to Paris when they brought that over to Paris.
But obviously you just mentioned there, Simon, about checking out the attraction virtually in a simulator before it gets the go-ahead. But I remember it was only there in 2003 when I was there, and when I went back a few years later, it had completely gone. But it's basically like a big red washing machine that you're sitting in. And you can put in loops, you can put in all these different corkscrews, and you basically just pick the intensity and drag and drop all the different elements, and then you ride your roller coaster. And the funny part is that there's a screen on the outside, and there's the camera on the inside, and you can see people's faces while they were riding. But
Did they record your video in Paris? I never did it in Paris.
I never got a recording of it. Now I don't know if
Okay,
it's because
at the original in Walt Disney World, you could buy your on-ride experience on a VHS tape.
Oh wow!
No,
it was a funny video. It was very funny.
Yeah, you might have been able to, but I was a poor student then. I was only 16 years old. I couldn't have afforded €1.99 for a VHS.
Oh, that feels like so much effort to be creating that many VHS.
I know, it's ridiculous. Yeah,
they were not easy technologies to use.
Just imagine the stockroom.
You think of the difference now, where at least in Florida, you come off an attraction and then automatically on your phone is a video of you on the ride without you having to do without you having to make any interaction at all.
Very
It'd be
big
nice
change.
if that comes to Disneyland Paris one day.
I hope so, yeah.
Photo Pass came a few years behind everybody else, so hopefully that'll also be added to ours. If everything's going wireless and RFID very soon.
Exactly, because with the attractions out there, the attractions know that you are on them without you having to do anything, which is quite an amazing thing.
Kind of scary as well.
Yeah, the attraction knows exactly what seat you're in on every ride that has that technology integrated into it.
So in essence, they could probably, I mean, it would be a bit cheeky to stick Tyler, but they could synth his voice with him screaming your name or something at the start or at the end or something.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Like you could get shout outs from the band.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting thing is, they have posters for, bands, rock groups and stuff in the queue area.
Yeah.
In Florida, those posters are digital and they automatically incorporate your name. So you're walking around.
No way.
Yeah. So you're walking around and then suddenly, maybe you won't notice it, but someone in your group will point out, hang on a minute, your first name is part of this poster. So that's kind of cool.
That is very awesome.
Yeah. So like I said, the attraction knows exactly where you are inside it. Not that you're just in the attraction in general, but you're in the queue area and that you're on the coaster part and so on.
Fantastic.
See, I was going to say you could use the technology, so if somebody is sick in the vehicle, you can pinpoint it to the exact person, and then they have to come in on the day off, before they leave, and clean the ride vehicle up. Because if you know exactly who's sitting where, you could pinpoint it.
I like how they've left it covered in sick until they've tracked this guy down again and be like, right, you're coming back. We've been running the train with sick on it for days.
Have you ever actually seen anybody be sick at Disneyland Paris?
Nope.
Me neither.
Not in a theme park, no.
Right, yeah, exactly. Which is quite good.
Yeah, relieving, really.
Yeah, just imagine coming down the loop and, that hitting you in the face.
That is a good reason to always sit in the front two seats.
So is that you're out of the hit zone?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No one can be sick on you if you're at the front of the train.
Well, so no, surely if you're at the back of the train. Unless they're sort of throwing up in the air and coming back.
If you're at the back of the train and they throw up at the front of the train, then it's probably going to come back and hit you, isn't it?
I'm glad we're really, really deeply thinking this through.
Yeah, so think about that next time you ride the attraction.
There's always with roller coasters. There's always a sort of, it doesn't happen at Disney, but there's you get to the front of the queue. And then, one of the trains will look like it's been very recently washed and it's still slightly wet. And you're like, well, it's not raining outside and it hasn't been raining all day. So what's been going on here?
Yeah, I'm going to be riding every roller coaster now with my mouth closed. Just in case. And one of those nose pegs that some sports stars wear? I'll be wearing one of those as well.
Eyes shut as well. You're taking all precautions. You're going to be wearing a mask with goggles on.
You need to be prepared. Is there anything else anybody wants to add about the actual attraction or the actual ride element itself? Because obviously the music's attached to the coasters. You've got the lights on different trusses, and you do ride through and under and over different bits of metal trussing as if it was like on a staged area. Has anyone got any other facts or any opinions on the actual attraction itself before we move on to the future?
I mean, I can tell you that it's definitely an improvement over the original version of it.
Ooh.
I'd say, in my opinion.
This is interesting.
If you're talking about the ride part, in the Gravity building, I'd say that's way more of an experience than the original version is.
Because I disagree with you, because I think that the theming in Paris kind of feels a bit like a cop-out to me, because, I mean, every Disney attraction has a light show going on with it. That's nothing new. Whereas I prefer the idea that you're sort of racing through an LA street and there are these big cartoony signs that, sort of illuminate as you go through them, as you go past them. So I feel it's a bit more of a kind of dynamic experience, whereas it changes as well, because you're going past different signs. Whereas, of course, in Paris, fine, the lights might be doing a fractionally different thing, but at the end of the day, it's still probably the same color lights flashing at you as you're going around. So I feel like, also particularly, it has two, the roller coaster has two sort of flat sections. I think only one of which is actually a brake run. But it has two sort of flat sections where you go along for a short period. And in Paris, to me, those always feel a little bit, they feel a little bit dead. Whereas in America, you're going past these, these big signs that illuminate you, or you're going through something's happening while you're there. So I feel like it just sort of makes the attraction feel a little bit more complete. So personally, I prefer the American one. But before Alan argues back, because I sure have some very good points to make, I just want to say that I feel like I've been quite negative about the attraction for this whole podcast. And although I don't think the theming in Paris is great, and I think it could be better, I think the roller coaster is absolutely amazing. I love the launch, and it is one of my favourite attractions at Paris. So I don't want to feel too negative about it. Anyway, Alan, make the Parisian version sound amazing. Go.
I mean, a big, one of the clear differences is in the original version, it's all lit with black light, isn't it? So it's like a Fantasyland dark ride in that it's all UV. In Paris, it's another difference in Paris there is that it's got fog everywhere, hasn't it? The smoke inside the interior, and then it's lit with stage lighting. The story definitely makes more sense in the original, but I'd say visually it's a lot more spectacular in Paris. And I don't like the exterior of the attraction, and I don't think the pre-show makes any sense. But the actual coaster part is amazing in Paris. I think it's a really cool experience.
Now, not having ridden the original one in America, I must agree with Alan there. Being the only version I've ever ridden. But I think my love of staging and lighting and being backstage, I think if I was to ride the original one, I probably would still pick Paris. Now, obviously, it's easy to say that without actually being on the original coaster. But I do like the fact that the smoke fills the room and you've got the moving headlights moving around. And
I think all of that gives you a much greater appreciation of the depth and the scale of it in Paris. Whereas in Walt Disney World, because you're essentially in a black room with flat, like cardboard-like signs, you're not quite as aware of how big it all is, I'd say.
If any of you listeners at home would like a sort of a feel for how big it is, then do go on YouTube and look up a POV for the sort of sister attraction that's not built inside a building, which is called Express Platform 13, because that you can actually see what's going on the roller coaster there. So that gives you a really good feel for, say, like the rollover loop that you do at the start, the corkscrews later on, and these sort of flat sections we were talking about. You can actually see those, whereas if you ever watch a POV from either of the Rock and Roller Coasters, you cannot see a thing about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and that, you're talking about the first inversion, that's one of my favourite moments at Disneyland Paris is coming out of the rollover or the C7, whatever you want to call it, but coming back down to the ground, just being, just the visual of being upside down, 80 feet or however tall it is, on that ceiling, and then diving back down to the ground. That's a really cool moment.
It's a fantastic element in it, definitely.
Yeah. And then I always think on that, this is amazing. I wish more people would ride this because they're missing out on this experience.
But then obviously the selfish part of me is glad that not as many people are riding it, because it does. If you do want to get onto it and you've only got a certain amount of time, you can guarantee that you will get onto Rock and Roller Coaster.
Exactly, yeah. Another thing about the one in Florida is that you probably know this, that the route that because you're meant to be actually following a route to the Aerosmith concert, the road signs along the route of the attraction are actually indicating a real route. It's not made up. It's meant to be sort of, obviously the coaster track is not following Google Maps, but the signs follow like the order going from Hollywood to Inglewood, I believe it is, where the Forum, that's the arena that they're performing in at the end of the attraction. That's where you end up, So you start from point A and then you go to point B.
That's very interesting, that.
Yeah.
Because obviously, not knowing the geographical locations of any of these places, if I was on the attraction, I probably wouldn't take that in. But again, that's the Disney difference, isn't it?
Yeah, that
attention to detail.
You probably wouldn't work that out while you're actually riding it, but it's nice that they've done that.
Yeah. Something we didn't really mention when we were talking about the ride vehicles and the trains, the difference between the original version in Walt Disney World and the Paris version. Is there any difference, like in the comfort, in the feel of the actual train, the ride vehicles?
I don't think so in the comfort, but I mean they're styled differently, because in Florida it's a super stretch limo.
Yeah,
that's what you ride in, and then in Paris it's a sound tracker, and then of course, I mean, I think the vehicles in Paris have actual lights on them, don't they, and illumination, and they've got like indicators, like meters, volume meters, and stuff like that. Whereas they're just basically a limousine shell in the original.
So obviously the Disneyland Paris version's better.
Well, arguably, yeah.
Apparently, this is from designingdisney.com. A volume unit meter can be seen at the hood of every sound tracker. It's a series of 40 green, orange, and red lights which flicker in accordance to the volume of the music that can be heard on board each train.
Yeah.
Which I've never actually... I mean, I think you see it when you're not on it.
Exactly, yeah. It's quite hard to see while you're on the ride.
But nonetheless, a cool thing that they put in. Are there any things on the trains that differentiate, sort of show whether it's train 1, 2, 3, 4? Because say in America they have
license plates, don't they? I'm not sure in Paris. Do they actually have a number 1 on the train and a 5? I've never really paid attention to that.
Certainly in America they have to change them over during servicing for whatever like memory stick they've plugged into the train that time. So it wouldn't be anything permanent. It would be something that they could switch around if there was anything. That can be our question of the podcast, our challenge.
There always is one. This time it is this question.
There you are. Is there anything that differentiates the sound tracker so you know which one you're getting on?
I'll tell you what they do have on the front. Sorry. They have a nice CD on the front of them just to make them as modern as possible.
They do, don't they? Yeah.
Nice little CD reflecting in the light.
I was going to say, like, something that's unusual about the Rock and Roller Coaster is that the trains come into the station empty, don't they?
Yes.
You think about Space Mountain. The train comes back with a full load of guests, and you can see their reaction to the ride. Same with Big Thunder Mountain and Temple of Peril. But on the Rock and Roller Coaster, it comes in completely empty, which is kind of mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a bit disconcerting, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
like
seeing them getting launched off, and then they've obviously flew off because they haven't came back.
Yeah, it's like nobody comes back.
It's the ride to hell. Anyway, so let's go to the future. What will obviously, if we were betting men, which I don't really bet on anything because I don't want to lose any money. Even £1 is too much money to lose. This is where we now place our bets as to what we think might happen in the future. Obviously, the biggest possibility is probably going to be a new story and a total re-theming of the whole thing. Before we discuss that, is there any band that you would like to replace Aerosmith with, if you wanted to keep it down the music theme?
James Blunt.
Bewitched.
Oh, look at them. Now, you do realise that someone's now going to have to find a POV and play Bewitched.
I was joking, just to clarify.
I was only fractionally joking. Actually, I would really love somebody to make me a James Blunt Rock and Roller Coaster.
Yeah,
every time I go clubbing, I'll go to the DJ, and even in like R&B clubs, and be like, "Sorry, James Blunt, please." People seem to think James Blunt doesn't fit anywhere, but I'm sure you can put it wherever you want, and he'll be amazing.
Is there an R&B version of James Blunt's music?
This is sidetracking quite considerably from
we've
Rock and
gone
Roller
off- gone
Coaster,
off topic.
but the one of the very first times that it wasn't a SOBAT back then, a synchronized onboard audio track, but the first times that was being tested was by an Imagineer called Tom Morris, who was testing.
Yeah. He's been tweeting a lot about this.
Yes, and this has become a big internet thing. He was on the Space Mountain Inn, I can't remember whether it was Florida or California, but he put together a playlist of like 80s music, because it was the 80s, I guess. So he originally made Space Mountain effectively to rock music, and that's sort of where the idea of Rock and Roller Coaster kind of came from, I think, from following his tweets.
That's a really good point, isn't it? That's the genesis of the Rock and Roller Coaster.
Well, why didn't we?
I don't know why I
discuss this
suddenly
at the
decided to mention that now in the future section, but there we are. I certainly remember.
I haven't picked my band yet. My favourite band actually is the Blue Tones, an indie band that probably nobody's ever heard of before. I think they had a number 2 single once a long time ago in 1995. But
So neat.
Yeah, their music probably wouldn't go very well with the Rock and Roller Coaster.
Can I?
Is there any modern bands that would fit in?
See, I've always thought if they went with Daft Punk, then they could do some kind of Tron theme for it. But that's
a
going
good shout.
A bit of a weird version of it. But it's because they're French artists and it's in France, and they did like to promote sort of French things, didn't they, in Disneyland Paris? But that's disappearing.
Well, they have just built Ratatouille. Well, I say just built. That was a while ago now, I guess.
I was thinking of taking out Cinemagique and taking out the Visionarium and stuff like that.
It's a good shout though, Daft Punk. It would
Daft Punk
obviously,
is a good idea.
if you add some lasers and some holograms. And obviously we haven't mentioned projection mapping yet, so we'll put some projection mapping in there as well.
Do you know the story about Daft Punk and Disney Village? I don't know it well enough to say on a podcast. But
I don't. So now you have to tell us.
If you Google it, if you just Google it, basically their career started because of some kind of meeting in Festival Disney.
Well, there you go.
Excellent.
But look that up. It was like their demo tape was handed over to someone in Festival Disney, and that's how it all started.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So really, they owe Disneyland Paris to give them the royalty-free rights to their brand and their music for the new layover of this attraction.
They do.
Yes, I wonder how much Disney do fork out to be able to have Aerosmith's music.
Well, hang on. That brings me back to a point. Did you find the band that was originally supposed to be in the Rock and Roller Coaster?
No doubt.
No.
Am I making it? Or did I say I wanted that in a tweet
That
somewhere?
sounds familiar, but what I found was that it was meant to be the Rolling Stones,
Okay.
and they were interested in doing it, but the licensing fee that they asked for was too much for Disney to afford. Well, Disney didn't want to pay it, basically. So then they were looking up a cheaper, more affordable band.
Hello,
And
Aerosmith.
at the
You are
time-
cheaper and more
Yeah,
affordable.
well, and at the time, they'd done a deal with Touchstone Pictures for Armageddon.
Which was
you know?
obviously Disney.
Yeah, that was like June '98 that the soundtrack for that film came out, and then so the Rock and Roller Coaster opened a year later, didn't it? In '99.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. It says it was on Jim Hill Media. It said that Aerosmith asked about a tenth of the price of what the Rolling Stones were asking for.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if they
I guess
asked me,
when
if
we
they asked me, I would have provided them some music for a tenth of that tenth. I can play a couple of notes on a guitar.
And you'll sing the whole way around, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
actually, you've already done that before.
I've
to
done it already,
an excellent
so-
response.
Yeah,
You're a proven
So-
talent, Andrew.
they know where to find me. I'm sure Disney have got my email address now.
I'm always
So we-
surprised. Sorry, on the Rock and Roller Coaster, I'm always surprised that they haven't changed the music. They haven't just simply changed the music yet. And if you look at, do you know Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios?
Nope.
Not
Okay,
usually, though.
Well, that's basically, in simple terms, that's a roller coaster where when you get on it, you've got an interface and you can choose the soundtrack for your ride.
Oh, cool.
Every seat on the coaster you all hear a different piece of music. You're not all hearing the same piece of music.
Kind of like
You're
a
hearing-
silent disco, but on a roller coaster.
Yeah, you're hearing exactly the song that you chose. So, that's something that they could add to the Rock and Roller Coaster if they wanted to make a sort of subtle change to it.
I like that. Yeah, obviously. There's only so many Aerosmith songs if you were keeping it down the Aerosmith route. So you'd have a selection screen in front of you. I don't really know any of these Aerosmith songs. I'll just press random.
Yeah,
but if there was a lot of if it was changed to rock music rather than just one band,
exactly.
then obviously a selection of lots of different rock classics would be a really nice touch, wouldn't it?
The settings are recording studios, so you'd imagine a recording studio would probably have a few bands to have.
Exactly, it's a weird recording studio if they've only got one act.
Yeah, the label just has the one band.
And when you're in the queue area anyway, if you listen to the door, you can hear the other band preparing for their version of the roller coaster.
There we go.
You could argue, how could, since Aerosmith asked so little money for the attraction, how they can afford to rent out Studio 8 and 9 with a whole roller coaster inside it? Because that's probably quite expensive in studio time, isn't it?
Oh, well, not in Walt Disney Studios, it's not.
Right, then if we move away from music, and obviously a lot of people are discussing a Marvel theme for that end of the Walt Disney Studios. So what are your thoughts and opinions on a Marvel overlay for the attraction? Keeping the same coaster track, obviously, but it would just be the theming behind it and the story behind it. Because even though I do watch Marvel films, I haven't watched them all, and I do like superhero films, but not my best genre, not my favourite genre to watch. So it'd still be interesting, because obviously it would bring new tech, it would bring new ideas. Just what are your thoughts if it was to go to with like a Marvel or Avengers or Spider-Man type of theme?
I was just thinking in terms of Marvel, Iron Man immediately springs to mind because of the AC/DC songs used on the soundtrack, which is obviously rock music. So you could have you could have Back in Black, something like that, on the coaster. Or, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy would work, wouldn't it? Because you could have the mixtape. You could have, Groot has plugged the mixtape into the vehicle and you're listening to Star-Lord's songs while you're on the ride, something like that.
So that would be good. That would be cheap way of improving the ride as well. Obviously, the audio and the license and stuff, they have to buy the IP from themselves, which I'm sure they'll get around that. But the lighting's all there already. They'd obviously have to make some tweaks to the ride vehicle and the theming around the place. But surely that doesn't cost as much as building a brand new attraction or completely changing elements of the ride. When the roller coaster's there, it's got the speakers on it. You could kind of do that within a year, couldn't you, really?
Well, definitely. I mean, the rumours have been circulating for so long that there's going to be some sort of Marvel overlay to Rock and Roller Coaster. We've been saying how, Disney know that the backlot area of the Studios Park particularly really needs a very visual overhaul. We've been saying how Aerosmith and the kind of theme of Rock and Roller Coaster currently is it could do with a refresh. It feels a bit old now. So definitely bringing in a franchise like Marvel would do. And equally, we've just seen them do it very, very successfully in California with Tower of Terror. And I hope they don't change our Tower of Terror, because it fits so nicely with what the theme of the park is meant to be. However, what you could definitely do is start bringing in a sort of Art Deco 20s style, like they've just done with changing Tower of Terror to Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout in California. If you start bringing in that style into Backlot, then you have a nice seamless transition from Tower of Terror. You go through Courtyard, which again you could bring into that sort of 20s theme, flowing into a Marvel area with where Rock and Roller Coaster currently is in Backlot. And then you would change the entire park to simultaneously fit the original sort of Roaring 20s theme of Walt Disney Studios, and you'd be giving it a new lease of life with Marvel, and finally it would look really good. I think Luke at NIDLP Geek has a very, very similar idea to this, which he's probably written in his long essay that he sent through to us. And I think he's done an article on it as well, so check out his ideas on that, because they're very cool. It's very doable, and it wouldn't cost a huge amount.
Are you the financial advisor now for Disneyland Paris?
If I was, they'd be doing a lot more building, and they'd be far more bankrupt.
Yeah. Again, it does need freshened up, and obviously, eventually, whether it's next year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, it's going to happen eventually, I would say, given that now the Walt Disney Company do own Disneyland Paris, and obviously that Walt Disney Studios does have to have the focus kind of brought to it. It would be sad to see Rock and Roller Coaster go. Obviously, being one of the first roller coasters I ever ridden as a young teenager, getting over my fear of those rides in the dark. So it would be sad to lose that. But then again, to see more the new tech and hopefully a new audience get interested in the attraction, it would be so cool to see that in the future.
Definitely, it needs some projection mapping as well. Exterior of the building, the interior, onto your faces as you're going around. Projection mapping everywhere.
Well, you could have some kind of viewing area, depending on what the story is. If it is Iron Man, or if it's Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy, there could be some kind of viewing area of, I don't know, these superheroes trying out new... If it's Iron Man, trying out new Iron Man suits, and you could maybe project things onto the ride vehicles, or you could even have drones flying around inside the show building, as long as they don't crash into the coaster. They could be carrying some LED screens that would be showing different superheroes flying around, and you could be racing them maybe inside the show building. Obviously, health and safety would have no issue with that whatsoever.
If they could projection map onto the side of a train, that would be so amazing, because every roller coaster train travels at a different speed, so they'd have to have like instantaneous tracking and adjusting technology to be able to do that. And then equally the amount of projectors that you'd need to be able to get onto every angle. But I mean, if they could do it, wow, that would be impressive, wouldn't it? See a roller coaster train like changing colour and having things happen to it as it went around would be cool.
It could do it.
Probably not worth it for the hassle it would cause, but
it could do it in the station. It could do it in the station where everyone's boarding. Obviously, it wouldn't need as much, and obviously the trains would be going at a set speed, so you could have some kind of patterns going around on the vehicles, or again, you could have different characters projection mapped onto the faces of the guests as they're ready for launch when you're queuing up next to them, and obviously every now and then you put a hidden Mickey in there every now and then on someone's face.
I was going to say they could certainly just add projection screens inside the coaster part of the attraction. Like, Hyperspace Mountain has these large screens which they, are using for multiple things now, aren't they? They were using them for Mission 2 content, and now they're doing Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain content on the same screens. And the Tron Light Cycle Power Run in Shanghai, they've got some very large screens inside that attraction. So they're projecting, film and media clips onto the screens and as you're going past them.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it back down to earth, because obviously we were going a bit crazy there with our projection. But yeah, obviously what we don't want is everything just to be replaced by screens. But then if obviously it's in the dark, you can't really see any practical scenery, so having the screens there doesn't really matter as much.
I'll say one thing about screens is that, I agree that I don't want attractions to be all screens, but I just have done the Avatar Flight of Passage ride at Disney World, which is literally all screens, but it's probably like the single best ride I've ever been on. And there aren't animatronics during the ride, there aren't sets, but you don't miss them. So that kind of is a counter argument, isn't it?
That is true. I remember following your tweet last week, seeing your reaction to that, and then I do not like... Well, I don't mind spoilers, so I then found a video on YouTube and watched... obviously, it doesn't have the same effect at all.
Yeah, you can never ever spoil that ride, because what you've got on your computer screen is not quite the same as what they built in that massive show building.
How do you know I haven't got an IMAX screen in my garage?
No, it's literally got the biggest cinema screen I've ever seen. So, it just goes to show, screen-based attractions can actually be really, really good.
I think I would like to agree with you on that. Obviously not seeing it, but I know there's been a lot of argument against just all-screen attractions, and to some extent Ratatouille obviously does rely on the screens in the different areas of the attraction, and probably that attraction might have been better without as many screens, maybe, in the 3D effect. Obviously now with the technology they've shown there on the Flight of Passage, if they could have it on such a scale as that with the and I know they're bringing Ratatouille to America as well now.
Exactly,
just copy the same format. So it's a shame that they won't be updating it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they'll solve the problems in Ratatouille and then bring those changes back to Paris eventually. That would be the coolest thing, wouldn't it?
That would never happen, surely.
Well, I don't know. They made changes to Pirates of the Caribbean that immediately has been done in Paris before they've gone to California. So the changing of the take a wench for a bride scene. So
true.
There's no reason why nowadays we can't be down with the kids, keeping up with what's street.
Just saying that makes you not street whatsoever.
Rats. Gets me every time.
But yeah, what else could they do at the show building? Obviously, at the moment, it's just a big corrugated steel box with some purple trim and a bit of trussing.
I think one option that no one's really discussed is that if Disney are thinking really, really big, an option might be that they just demolish the whole backlot area and they actually start over. That they could do that. They do stuff like that in Florida. It sounds a bit inefficient and crazy to waste all of that, but you never know. They might be thinking of something like that.
They certainly do like to. Well, certainly with the way that they do a lot of building now, is they like to build entire new areas. So, say if you look at what's going on in Florida right now, they've just built the entire new area of Pandora. They're looking to build the entire new area of Star Wars, Toy Story. So it's very plausible, but they just do a whole thing.
Exactly, they're not adding in like individual attractions. They'll just flatten. If it's an existing site, they'll just flatten the whole area and then build one big sort of mega land that has a continuous theme throughout it.
Because Disneyland Paris doesn't have as many attractions as all of the parks put together in Walt Disney World, would it make more sense to use some of the land that Disneyland Paris have got available to kind of build the new area that's connected to Walt Disney Studios, and then once that's up and running, then demolish what's already there? Or then do you kind of think, well, it's a waste of time knocking that down when it, you know what I mean? Like, rather than knocking it, having nothing, even though it may maybe only take out 2 or 3 attractions of that end of the park, if they did do that. I don't know, would it be worthwhile just adding extra, or would it be better to completely demolish it?
I would hope that they would completely demolish it and do it to the Disney modern Disney standards, which are incredibly high now. It's ridiculous what they build these days in the American parks, at least.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about what's in the backlot area, you have the sort of the cafe that's opposite Rock and Roller Coaster. Then you've got Motors Action, which I love Motors Action, but I mean it's got to go now. And I mean, fine, you could start building bits around it, but I think realistically, Alan, you're probably right. Yeah, if we want something that's to this new amazing Disney standard that they have achieved with things like Pandora, then let them have a properly blank canvas again.
Yeah, a totally fresh start.
Although I can't imagine it's going to happen in Paris.
No.
Just saying.
So the list that we've got here for the future section, we'll just cross it all out and just put demolish and start again.
Yeah,
That'll makes our job easier.
Well, I mean, in fairness, if you do that, you don't end up with this sort of thing where, say, like with Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout, people have been like, oh, well, you're ruining our tower that we have such a spiritual connection with, because then they'd be like, well, that tower's gone now. Instead of, oh, it used to be like this, or it used to be like that. Or say, with Space Mountain, where we still, in Paris, I mean, where we still have so many people who are nostalgic for the original From the Earth to the Moon iteration of the ride. Well, if the ride had just been demolished, you wouldn't have that.
That's true.
And you have to think, like, the studios in Paris, soon they'll be 20 years old, which is weird.
That's terrifying to think.
Yeah, so you think about, it's a generational thing. Someone's gone from being a baby to being 20 years old in the time that park's been open. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, the park has changed a lot. Because, I mean, if you think, Tower of Terror wasn't there when the park initially opened, Crush's Coaster wasn't there, Ratatouille wasn't there, Toy Story Playland wasn't there. There was so little there at all. So it has changed a lot, but it's unlike a lot of Disney parks, which sort of grow with large sections at a time. It's been very bitty in the way that it's grown up. So maybe it would be nice to see a bit like Ratatouille. It was a whole mini land that they did at once, even though that's only one attraction and a restaurant. It would be nice to see a whole area get done properly, seamlessly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when they did Toy Story Playland, that was, I mean, I don't love the Toy Story theme, but that was something that was that was sort of Disney quality. Like they would build that in Florida or California. You know, it was good enough. So that's the kind of thing they would build over in their parks. And the same with Ratatouille. You know, Ratatouille wasn't like a budget version of a Disney ride. It was Disney trying to do their best.
Yeah, and it wasn't just sort of Crush's coaster. Oh, we've got this idea for a roller coaster. Okay, we're just going to stick it there. And then there's sort of nothing around it. And you can, you know, they're still stuck with this sort of studio theme, so it's actually quite an unattractive ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. With Toy Story Playland and with Ratatouille, there's none of that. But hopefully that does signal for the future.
Yep.
Something else we've got on our list, which I want to discuss before we move on to listener opinions, is virtual reality. Now, I've had a few discussions on Twitter about this before, and I keep changing my mind whether I would like to have something like this in Disneyland Park. Obviously, there's a load of coasters now in Germany where there's VR headsets, and I think Alton Towers have got this now on what used to be Air. I can't remember what it's called now. Is it Galactic something or whatever?
Galactica?
Air Galactica, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, but with the virtual reality, you get the same. Obviously, you feel the sensation, and you're wearing the virtual reality headset, and you can look around. And obviously, I don't think they have individual rides as yet on each individual headset, but the potential is there that each person can kind of get a randomised ride from a different location, and then instead of having to shut attractions down to give them overlays for seasonal holidays, like they do with Haunted Mansion and It's a Small World in America, they could do that quite easily with a virtual reality headset. And again, if you're theming it with Marvel or another IP that Disney own, then if there's a new film out, you just whack in another playlist. What's your thoughts on the technology? Because I do like it, but then again, is it a cheap way of getting around having to plan all of the physical sets again and think of the overall story, leaving it to some people in the studio somewhere? So, Simon, what do you think? I've
not tried it out yet. From what I've heard sort of mixed things. It obviously depends a lot on the quality of what you're seeing in VR. So say, I remember being someone who said the first time they went on Air Galactica at Alton Towers, they really enjoyed it. But then the second time, the sync was slightly out with the video, and it made them feel sick, and they tried to take the thing off halfway through, which obviously is not ideal. But then again, equally, I was watching a documentary about there's a little roller coaster in Europa Park, which is just a little small mine train, so very, very family ride, very basic kind of roller coaster that they've now got virtual reality headsets on. And it turns out that the human sort of like internal gyros are really not very sophisticated. So your brain can be tricked into believing a hell of a lot of things that aren't happening. So say if you have like a 90-degree banked turn, if you show someone a video of them doing a corkscrew as they go through that turn, you will believe you've gone through a corkscrew. You will fully believe you've gone through a corkscrew. So you can actually take things that, even though you've got the actual motion of it happening, well, you can not only exaggerate that, but make people believe they're going through motions that are totally different than what's happening to their body anyway, which I think is really exciting. But then again, equally, I'm a sucker for that sensation that you're going past something that's genuinely been built rather than that somebody's knocked together on a computer. So I do love 3D sets. But of course, Alan has just said that Flight of Passage is the best attraction he's ever been on, which is quite a claim because Alan knows a thing or two about theme park attractions. So maybe I'll be one over.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. Like, if they were going to add it to any attraction in Disneyland Paris, maybe they could add it to Casey Jr. to make it more thrilling or something. But and I mean,
there's nothing more thrilling than sitting in the back, facing the opposite way. On Casey Jr. If you haven't tried it out, I'd recommend it.
I've done that, yeah. I had never actually experienced VR on a roller coaster, but to me it doesn't appeal. I mean, it seems like the last place that I'd want to wear a VR headset with all the G-forces and your head potentially smashing around in the restraint.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound very comfortable.
No, and certainly, the advice always when you go on a roller coaster is things like, don't shut your eyes. So the idea that then you're going to have this headset on that's showing you something completely different than what's happening anyway yeah, I can understand how that could end up quite a sort of internally confusing experience.
And it seems a shame when they built, like you said, such a big roller coaster, like a physical thing, to then shut down your, primary sense, and so that you can't see any of it, you can't appreciate it, because they could have simulated it with a much smaller coaster, couldn't they? Like you were saying.
Yeah, certainly.
That's true. I'm kind of split, because obviously the tech geek in me wants to be able to experience this, and just thinking of all the different possibilities of being able to sit at home, and maybe if you're obviously in Walt Disney World now, you can book your fast passes 3 or 4 months in advance. You could, in the future, possibly you'll be able to sit at home.
2 months.
Is it 2 months?
Yeah.
You'll be able to. You'll be able to sit at home and think, well, I'm going to go on this new Marvel VR roller coaster, and I'm going to book in. I want this flight with Iron Man, and then the next time I want to go on with Groot on his little voyage from Guardians of the Galaxy. So that will be quite cool, being able to pick that. But then, like I say, even though I love technology and I do love messing around with virtual reality a little bit in the home, it just doesn't feel like Disney is the place for that to happen, because of obviously the grand scale of everything they do, and all the money they can spend on making all this elaborate roller coaster. And again, I agree, if you're putting all this time into a full-on roller coaster, and you don't need all of that, if you've got the virtual reality, then they're just wasting time and money, aren't they, really?
And I'd also say that, the whole concept of Disneyland is that it's, where the family plays, enjoys their day together. Whereas, VR, that's a very isolating experience, and you're not ever you can never, unless you take off the headset, you can never see the expressions of the group that you're with. You can't see if anyone's enjoying the ride. You can't see the person next to you.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they have cameras in the headrests in front, and then you can, in the virtual reality world, your face is mapped onto the person next to you, and then you can kind of see people's emotions around you. But then that's getting too complicated.
Yeah.
But I agree, it is a family place, isn't it? You want, some of the enjoyment on a roller coaster is seeing the person next to you who's never ridden a roller coaster before, seeing their reaction to it, and
you're doing it together. You're not doing it. You're not in this one-person coaster train. You're in a group of people.
Well, that's of course you went through single rider, and you don't like the people anywhere near you, and you don't know who they are, and you kind of feel like you want to be on your own.
Maybe,
but
I think the atmosphere. I think it still adds to the atmosphere, doesn't it? Just hearing the screams and the laughter. And think about the Tower of Terror. If you did the Tower of Terror completely on your own, it wouldn't be half as fun, would it?
Definitely. It's that laughter that makes it in Tower of Terror.
Yeah,
so.
And people clapping at the end. Just the reaction to it. People being surprised that it was more thrilling than they expected, or something like that.
That's so cool. If you've got any opinions on out there in Twitter land or podcast world, these 2 new places I've just invented, if you've got any opinions on the future of Tower of Terror, bloody hell. I need to put the explicit warning now on because I've just swore. If you've got any opinions...
We got 2 hours into it. We were doing so well.
If you've got any opinions on Rock and Roller Coaster, the future of it, that we haven't mentioned, let us know. We might read them out in a future podcast, or we might not, but we'll definitely enjoy reading them. And I know that Alan and myself and Simon will love to engage with you all on Twitter in your thoughts and your opinions after this podcast, so get them tweeting away. I'm going to go now to the listener opinions section. I'm going to quickly... flick through a load of tweets. I did ask on Twitter if you could send us your audio, but no one sent in the audio this time. It worked so well in the last episode, but I know it's quite difficult if you're not used to hearing your own voice, or you don't like recording your own voice. So we've got a load of tweets and emails this time, and a few direct messages as well. I'm just going to go through some of the tweets on that post. Sully's Arms. Now, obviously, we've recorded this in September, and they tweeted this in August. They wrote it on Friday, and for the first time in ages, everything worked, and it was awesome. Speed, music, lights. I'm loving that. I'm loving that as well. Stephanie Bubble on Twitter. Her boyfriend said, why do they put such an expensive drum kit in a showroom and no one can play it? He also said it should be at his house. And by the way, the ride hurts my head.
Oh.
See, I don't think it does that one. Obviously, I haven't been on the new version of Space Mountain, Hyperspace Mountain yet, so I haven't felt the new cars, the new trains. But Rock and Roller Coaster was always one that I came off, and I had no issue, really.
Yeah, I'd say it's the I haven't done Hyperspace Mountain either yet, but of the 3 looping coasters in Paris, it's definitely the most comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like looping roller coasters, definitely start with Rock and Roller Coaster, because that's the most comfortable one.
Absolutely.
That's good advice, yeah. Mitchell Disney on Twitter, he has actually sent us a direct message, but he said, going by the current replies, I'm guessing mine will be the most positive response. We have lots of smiley faces. And then Amandus Ravenswood, who also emailed in later on, has said that it looks like her is going to be the most negative response. Ella Caffrell, who writes a few articles for our website, quite a simple tweet really. It's a bloody ugly building. There's another swear word.
Fair play, yeah.
Yep.
Comes straight out with that, yeah.
Emily then tweeted and said, am I the only one that adores the smell?
What smell?
Smell?
Yeah. She's talking about Rock and Roller Coaster. Don't know.
Smell?
It's probably the fog, isn't it? From the show
Yeah,
building.
the smoke, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of slightly fruity smell of steak.
My dad's got a smoke machine and he hires out for different events, and he does buy off eBay the Tutti Frutti smoke fluid. So that's probably what she's talking about.
In fairness, that is actually a lovely smell.
The Rock and Roller Coaster Tutti Frutti is available as a car air freshener. That would be a lovely merchandise point there.
I'd buy it.
Wheelie Bricks, at Wheelie Bricks on Twitter. It's great fun, not much more to say really. Any in-depth information there. Daryl Reese-Taylor, not one to ride after a big lunch.
True.
That is true. DLRP Gids. I like the ride. It's just that it could be in any theme park. Nothing special about it.
Yeah.
I can see where they're coming from, but I disagree.
I don't think any other parks have done... Well, there are other parks, aren't there, with indoor coasters and flashing lights, but I don't think there's anything quite as cool as the Rock and Roller Coaster.
Not that
I don't think there's anything that's got it as sort of comprehensive as... Because, I mean, Rock and Roller Coaster here does have a theme. It's got a soap atlas, which is still pretty rare by roller coaster standards. So I think it does have a full package, even if it's not the most exciting roller coaster that Disney have ever made. Mainly because most Disney roller coasters are pretty special.
Mark Johnson, who is at Leicester Mark on Twitter, said he's a big fan of it. He loves the thrill at the start. It gives you and the entire ride afterwards a fine coaster, well themed, and a thumbs up emoji.
Huzzah!
Hey, DLP Celebration, a great ride, but way too short. Can't even listen to a complete song during the ride, but I wouldn't mind for a Guardians of the Galaxy transformation. When they put the abbreviation down, GOTG, I thought there were, for a minute there I was going to say Game of Thrones. I wouldn't mind for Game of Thrones transformation.
That's a good point. That's something I don't actually like about the attraction, is that they don't play one song throughout the ride. Like on the soundtrack of 3, you've got Love in a Roller Coaster and Walk This Way, so that, I would prefer it that they just played one song all the way through.
Yeah.
See, I disagree with you. I think it's cool that they do sort of mix it up, and you get a sort of highlights, greatest hits reel sort of feel to it.
Yeah,
so I quite like that actually.
And like soundtrack of 2 has 3 songs, doesn't it? Or within the one train.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically just get the like one line from each chorus, and then that's the end of the ride. The bits that everybody knows.
Put 10 songs into one soundtrack. Have the entire Aerosmith album.
Yeah, in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Alan Wheeler says, it goes upside down, so it counts as an extreme roller coaster in my book, so it's just not going to happen. My wife likes it, no, and I like the music. David at Disney, it could do with a retheme, as it looks a bit dated and cheap, but it's still a lot of fun, and that launch will never ever get old. That's true. No matter what you do with it, if the launch is there, that's going to be the biggest hit and the biggest part of the attraction, really. Christina KB, the one in Florida is much better going through LA in the rush hour. It feels like they cheaped out on this one. Like, what is the storyline here? And I feel like I need to put a voice on to read that last line. Like, what is the storyline here?
I think this is America fighting back, is it? Being like, no, we've got the better one. We've got the better one, guys. Your Parisian one sucks. Oh my god.
You can now tell, Alan, why Simon was at the Edinburgh Fringe for a week.
I know, he's very good with good with voices.
Especially the ones in his head. Now it's time for you, so I'm going to pass over the baton to Simon. Mitchell Disney has sent us a nice DM, so you can read this one now. Go on.
Yes, this is from @MitchellDisney on Twitter. Hello, Andrew. Possibly Simon too. Who knows? In fairness, I never know whether I'm going to be on these podcasts or not. I've only been on Rock and Roller Coaster once. I did it once for the first time in February. We had a bit of pixie dust and were taken through the Fast Pass queue. So I didn't really process in my mind what I'd agreed to do until I sat in the seat. I really enjoyed the ride. The lights and the atmosphere is great. I love Aerosmith music, so it was a really fun experience. I came off the roller coaster asking, when the hell did we actually go upside down? I really didn't feel the inversion. Would I go on Rock and Roller Coaster should it get its rumored Marvel re-theme? Probably not. Aerosmith and all the lights are the main reason I'd go on it again, rather than the roller coaster itself. I haven't done Space, Terra, or Indy, so have no plans to do them either. Thanks for the podcast. Can't wait to listen to it this November, Mitchell.
Cheeky little man.
He sent a winky face with that last night as well.
Now, depending on how long it takes me to edit this, it might take a couple of months, so November might be the possible launch date, yeah. Especially once Alan's got his legal team on us and taken anything out that he didn't like.
Oh, no. He's from Random Disney Guy, @Random Disney Guy on Twitter. He says, and he's quoting the pre-show here, "What a ride, what an experience, Ali. Love the pre-show, love the ride. I prefer the limo story used in America. I've heard rumours it's going to be re-themed to Spider-Man, along with other Marvel changes in the park. I'll be sad to see it go, but also happy as I'll have something new to experience."
Yeah, I think that's the feeling of all of us, really, isn't it? Obviously, if it's re-themed, it's one of those things we need to do. It'll be sad to see the old one go, but to have something new, it kind of gives you the excitement again, wanting to go back to do something different, doesn't it?
Definitely, and I really appreciate the quoting of the pre-show. That's really put a smile on my face.
Now, I shouldn't have started off with you, Simon, because I'm going to have to read Luke's email now.
Oh, I love Luke's emails. They're always fantastic. And this is longer than the dissertation that I'm writing at the minute for my degree.
It's a shame you can't just copy and paste parts of this email and put it in your dissertation.
Maybe I will, and just hope that they don't read it.
Out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey guys, just leaving my thoughts for the next episode on Rock and Roller Coaster. Looking forward to it. One of the opening attractions for Walt Disney Studios parks, Rock and Roller Coaster by default, was one of the highest quality attractions in the park due to the lackluster roster. He's always harsh with his words, isn't he? As time has progressed, it has kept its popularity both from guests and myself, but cracks have always been...
Butt cracks?
Butt cracks, oh yeah.
Oh,
just imagine that being said in an Irish accent as well. Not from guests and myself. Butt cracks have always been evident within the experience. My love for thrill rides is what has always enticed me to Rock and Roller Coaster, and little argument that it is one of the best courses in the resort, with Disneyland Park's two mountains just beating it to the punch. The combination of speed, inversions and pacing make it a joy for those looking for the high octane, and smoothness is heavenly compared to the rougher rides of Space Mountain and Indiana Jones. I'm not sure on the specifications, but to me, Rock and Roller Coaster has always felt slower than DLP's other two looping coasters. That could, however, be due to the dark shore room deceiving my concept of travel. It is faster, isn't it? So obviously the different route of the track and the fact that there's maybe less going on for him when he's on the ride probably does make it feel slower, but it is faster. As for the ride theming, there really isn't much to go by once sat in the trains other than come lighting. Wait a minute, is he doing this on purpose? As for the ride theming, there really isn't much to go by once sat in the trains other than some lighting effects, smoke and metal supports. Unlike Space, Big Thunder or even Indiana Jones, there isn't a lot to look at as you whiz along the track. Is he whizzing along the track now?
Exactly, yeah.
To me, whizzing means something else. So, butt cracks, whizzing, and something I won't repeat. Along the track, other than the odd flash of light or smoke effect, the reality of being thrown around a dark room is made all the more evident when these effects are broken. As we mentioned before, when we've ridden the attraction without the music. The real star of the attraction is the soundtrack and how it is incorporated into the experience. He's not a big music fan by any stretch, and he tends to avoid rock music when possible, but I dare anyone to ride Rock and Roller Coaster and not end up singing along to the famous Aerosmith hits everybody knows. It's another fine example of how Disney can take something you have no interest in and make it something special. The high pace, loud beats and tunes perfectly fit the dips and turns of Rock and Roller, so much so that not having it leaves you disappointed. On one such occasion I experienced exactly that, where I rode the attraction with none of the effects working, no smoke, no lights, no music, nothing. Maybe it was because I became so accustomed to these elements in the coaster, or because my fellow riders failed to cheer, scream or make any indication they were human, but I was bored. I distinctly remember shouting halfway through, "Cheer up everyone, we're in Disneyland," to get some sort of reaction out of my co-passengers. It didn't work. Oh, they must have been so boring. Fans of music and the rock genre are sure to get a kick or two from Rock and Roller Coaster's queue area. There's a lot in there for the enjoyable trip down music memory lane, though it does little for me. I recognise some of the names from the tour posters and signed merchandise, but it's something I never regret missing when opting for the Fast Pass line. To be honest, I've never actually done the Fast Pass line on Rock and Roller Coaster before. Anybody else done
It's not really necessary in Paris.
No.
No,
I've
no.
never missed that out.
Kind of a waste of a fast pass.
Yeah. The pre-show, on the other hand, go on.
Well, I mean, I guess in Paris, there's not like a limited amount you can have, really. To be honest, if you get a fast pass for a Rock and Roller Coaster in Paris, it'll probably just be for like the 5 minutes after that. So.
That's true. The pre-show, on the other hand, is a rather fun little experience with the title band's members evaluating part of the coaster. It's fortunately quick too, meaning even after several visits you won't dread its existence, unlike a certain Armageddon pre-show.
The Armageddon pre-show!
Take a shot. Despite being one of the strongest of the original 9 attractions to surface from 2002, Rock and Roller Coaster is not without its problems that I can only hope has numbered the days of the current theme. The attraction's exterior has always been nothing short of hideous and falls into the same problem as most Walt Disney Studios attractions. It's just a box with a sign on the front. More than likely down to budget limitations rather than creative, the entire Studios park suffers from this problem, which I pray will be improved upon as time progresses. Attraction entrances, when done right, are organic to their surroundings and are a part of the narrative in their own right, rather than just being an open doorway. Big Thunder Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean are two fine examples of good entrances, and I feel like they naturally belong in their respective lands. References to CDs and other outdated technology has also led Rock and Roller Coaster to fall into the past much too quickly than it should have. Of course, you can't stop the advancement of electronics, but having a giant disc on your show building was probably not a wise move if there was no intention to update it in the future. Since then, we have seen MP3 players and now digital streaming take over the home music industry, making parts of the attraction feel way behind with the times. Rock and Roller Coaster has always been a hot topic of debate over what becomes of the attraction once attention is brought onto fixing the left side of Walt Disney Studios Park, with ever-increasing rumours of a Marvel Land replacing backlot and production courtyard. Many have called for the attraction to receive a re-theme, so to fit the new location theming. Spider-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy have been popular suggestions from fans, but I personally see another occupant for the thrill ride, someone who can, in its own way, preserve the rock music history of the attraction while massively improving on quality and reach. Nearly there. There is one of those armchair Imagineering ideas I've given a lot of thought to and believe turning Rock and Roller Coaster into an Iron Man themed attraction would be the perfect next step in the ride's history. Easily one of the most famous characters to come from Marvel's cinematic universe, Iron Man's fast pace, high octane tone and love of rock music fits the roller coaster like a glove. Like a glove? Was that? I don't even know what that reference is from now. Not only would this add to the much-needed increased superhero presence to Disneyland Paris, it ensures that the high-octane experience we love from Rock and Roller Coaster remains long after Aerosmith have left the building. I'll spare you and the listeners the ordeal of my entire idea, but it consists of a very much Marvel... What's that stand for again? Marvel-centered universe. Cinematic universe.
Cinematic.
It's a good thing somebody knows what they're talking about. But it consists of a very Marvel Cinematic Universe inspired story that alternates between which train guests are allocated during loading. Each train will be themed around the different Iron Man suit from the movies, with each taking you on a journey against a different adversary, along with unique music, lighting and visual effects along the way. The current finale of a rock and roll coaster would play host to a projection mapping feast, making the most of the tight space to absorb guests into an exciting 180-degree experience along the brake tunnel. The scenes projected would also depend on what the story of their ride has been. Projection mapping wins the day. Someday I will put my full idea for an Iron Man rock and roller coaster retheme down on paper, so take this as a little taster, of what I would like to come. If there's interest to hear more, I may throw it online someday and cover everything I have envisaged, from entrance and exterior to queue and ride experience to exit. Thanks guys, and keep up the great work. I definitely would like to read all of his ideas because they do sound amazing.
So would I, absolutely. I think we should get Luke to write articles for our website, because, I mean, me and you don't really do it anymore, Andrew, and I mean, this to be honest, that's longer than I think any individual article I've ever written for the website anyway.
Well, I think the last article I wrote for the website was a copy and paste of a press release, so
that
take a lot
email,
longer than me.
That email was 1,195 words.
Wow.
Which is
That's
definitely an article length,
commitment.
isn't it?
Yeah. Excellent stuff.
To be honest, I agree with everything he says, really, especially the projection mapping bit, because that's the only bit I can actually remember at the moment, having read all of that. But yeah, if you want to, what I might do, I maybe ask Luke if he doesn't mind if we post that on our website, because obviously sometimes when you're listening to a podcast and you hear a lot of words read out like that, it's sometimes better to see it on the screen or read it on paper. So I'm sure he won't mind. We'll maybe post this on our website along with the podcast episode, so you can take a little read, because it is such a great email.
I mean,
Simon,
it's a nice 1,000 word précis of what we've said in the podcast, to be honest.
To be honest, we should have just read that, and that would have been the podcast sorted.
Job done.
Say, if Guardians of the Galaxy does come to the Tower of Terror in Paris, so that those characters are being used, then Iron Man would be a great fit for the Rock and Roller Coaster. I think he's got a good idea there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would link in with the New York theming as well of the New York hotel, wouldn't it? Would it be weird having them in two places at once, or would it not be a problem? Don't think it'd be a problem.
Well, based on Toy Story, I don't think they'd mind, would they?
I was about to say, yeah. That pops up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Why don't we just make it a Toy Story rock and roller coaster?
Oh dear.
That's better than the Bewitched idea you had before.
Oh, shots fired. I like the idea that maybe in America they'll just be like, cancel building that Slinky Dog roller coaster. We just refit the Aerosmith one. Much better.
Well, yeah, they can just put that coaster on that train on their coaster, can't they? And it's ready.
Block that one down. Yeah, shove Slinky Dog in.
Put Slinky Dog on the Rock and Roller Coaster. That'd be funny.
Go on, Simon. You can do Julian's.
So our next email in from Julian Hill. Rock and Roller Coaster really is a case of enjoy the ride, but dislike the theming. The building itself, like most of that outside of the studios, looks like a temporary seaside theme park attraction. And once you get into the queuing area, little improves. If you're going to pose as a cutting-edge recording studio, you really need to keep up to date. Modern taste in music have changed, but the decorations and posters that line the walls have not. Having said that, I did like the Guitar Museum with the artifacts behind glass. Presumably, this is foreshadowing of how the New York hotel will look once it's been all marvelled up. I hope so. The video you see in the holding area with the band getting ready is, at best, cringe-inducing and really doesn't stand up to repeated viewings. Once you're on the ride, things improve, and the experience itself is good. I find it less comfortable than Hyperspace Mountain, though, which is no doubt due to the recent refurb. For a musical roller coaster, I did think Rockin' would be more in sync with the music, though. The BBC documentary on the making of Space Mountain showed the lengths taken to match the experience with the music. While Dude Looks Like a Lady is clearly a great track, it does feel like incidental background music. It's telling that I can only name 2 Aerosmith songs, and the only other one I know is associated with Armageddon. The band haven't released an album for over 5 years, and even this latest offering only reached 35 in the French charts. That's fantastic knowledge you've got there. They're a tired and outdated band, reflective of a tired, outdated part of Disneyland Paris that's in desperate need of an update. I do hope the rumours that this is to become a Spider-Man ride prove true. I, for one, would be very happy for them to leave the track the same and simply replace Aerosmith and the recording studio aesthetic with a nighttime New York skyline. What would be more thrilling than whizzing between iconic buildings like the culturally popular web slinger? Keep up the fab work, all the best. Cheers, Julian. That's interesting. There's a couple of interesting points there. Things like, I mean, we're all agreed on sort of it being sort of an old kind of aesthetic going on, but saying that you feel the attraction's not as comfortable as Hyperspace Mountain. Well, Hyperspace Mountain must be a hell of a lot better than the last time I rode it when it was Mission 2. Crikey. Wow. They must have really done something with those trains. And it's interesting to hear as well, you think that Dude Looks Like a Lady feels like an incidental piece of music. Because I feel like maybe not for the start of the attraction, where you're going through the roll loops, but later on there's a lot of sort of meandering around and the sort of small hills there, but not really any sort of particular airtime. And I think Dude Looks Like a Lady does fit that bit of track quite well. So that's a really interesting point.
I do think it fits quite well. If it was a Spider-Man overlay or a Spider-Man theme, would you be able to incorporate the Meet Spider-Man into that at the same time?
He just sits next to you. Every left seat in the train is full of a Spider-Man.
So how many new cast members will they have to employ for that?
Look, we're owned by Walt Disney Company. They've got to go big, go hard or go home.
Alan, do you want to take the next one, if that's okay?
Yes, this is from Michael McNeela. He says, "Bonjour, guys. My bestie and I occasionally get scared by Rock and Roller Coaster, and Aerosmith's music doesn't resonate with us. We trolled high BPM energy clubbing music one night back at the hotel, found a few tracks which have an intense 3-second build up to a big drop. It was very technical. We brought our in-ear headphones to Walt Disney Studios along with a headphone splitter, queued up the track to the right point, and quickly plugged in the splitter as the coaster train rolled around the first corner before launch. Then hit play as the 3-second countdown began. It was the best ride of Rock and Roller Coaster ever, and both of us were so into and distracted by the music that we weren't frightened. It's now how we regularly experience Rock and Roller Coaster. Boom, anecdote over. P.S. This is our favourite track to use, and I'm going to mispronounce this because I don't know who it is. Sander Van Dorn? Is that how you say it?
Sounds about right to me.
Looks right.
Gold Skies Tiesto remix.
I'm going to have to look that up now.
On the email, they did send a link to the YouTube video for that track. So what I might do, if the technology works, I might actually place a little clip of the music just about here. Obviously, what they're doing there is they're listening to different music, which is high BPM, beats per minute, and trying to sync it up with a big drop as well. Now, how cool is that, having to spend all that time, go through loads of different music tracks, finding ones that are timed perfectly with the drop, and the launch as well.
And I was going to say, I think with Bluetooth cordless headphones now, it's much more practical to do that kind of thing on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Rather than having the cord and having to have your phone out.
Just imagine trying to press play and you're getting launched and you mistime it and your phone gets launched as well as you.
That's why you want to sit in the front seat again, because you're not going to get hit in the face by a phone. Yeah.
Well, I imagine this must be an awful lot easier than what Tom Morris was doing when he was working on the Space Mountain thing back in the 80s. Because I guess he must be using a Walkman or something, and he was going home to a computer and splitting the different tracks on a computer and then putting them on some format that he could then listen to, rather than just being able to hit play or whatever and mess around with tracks on his phone or anything. What a great age we live in.
It must have taken a very long time to rewind all those tapes.
Yeah.
Just do it with a pencil, it's fine. Amanda's Ravenswood sent us an email. It says, "Hello, Magical DLP." Totally ignores, unless it's talking about Magical DLP as the we and the us rather than just my account. I don't know. Before
it's all about you, Andrew. It's all about you.
Well, my name is on the podcast anyway.
Rub it in.
Before anything, please excuse my grammar language mistake. I am French. They've already spoke better English than I can French, so that's fine, Amanda's. Here are my opinions on Rock and Roller Coaster, Walt Disney Studios only. First thing, the facade. It is pretty coherent with the local backlot theme, which makes it rather ugly in my opinion. It's not particularly appealing, nor does it make you want to ride it if you don't know what's inside. That's quite true, isn't it? Obviously, with a lot of coasters, I suppose it's maybe a good, if we said before, it doesn't put you off from riding it because you can't see it, but then obviously it doesn't attract you to come to the attraction either. I suppose that's what the big signs are for on the front of the building, but then again, the 2D, they're very boring. Doesn't really do its job, does it? I find the interior queue rather well decorated, although there isn't enough to look at to make you forget about the time you spend in that room. I don't think you spend too long in there, but obviously it depends on the time of year you go. The pre-show isn't very good in my opinion. It does a good job at introducing the storyline, but having famous people on the screen without even looking at you isn't exactly immersive. The final part of the queue line is great, watching the soundtrackers get catapulted while hearing people's screams, all that in a dark, large soundstage, really builds up the tension. Kind of like the spooky flickering lights and pipe noises in the boiler room of the Tower of Terror. I will split my opinions of the ride itself into two parts, the coaster track and the theming. The track obviously begins with the propulsion of the ride vehicle at a very high speed, immediately followed by multiple loop-de-loops inversions at very high speed. But for the rest of the ride gets pretty boring. It is not well balanced, as you get almost all of the crazy inversions and accelerations at the beginning. The reason I said it gets boring is that you don't even have anything interesting to look at. According to Wikipedia, the storyline is as follows, and it listed all the storyline about working with the engineers and checking the new roller coaster experience. Basically, we are on a roller coaster with synchronized music and light effects, and the storyline behind this is that we are on a roller coaster with synchronized music and light effects. I was very disappointed by that when I first rode it. In Crush's Coaster, you are underwater. In Space Mountain, you are in space. Here, you're on a roller coaster. There's nothing particularly interesting to look at, and the light show is often out of sync with the music when you actually have some music to listen to. This is, to me, the main problem of the attraction. The storyline isn't really a storyline, which is why the theming isn't really great either. The other problem is Aerosmith. I don't like hard rock, but it's just a personal opinion. However, I don't think Disney parks and Aerosmith go well together, and barely anyone I know actually knows or likes Aerosmith. I'd be very happy to. I'd be very happy to see the attraction get the rumored Guardians of the Galaxy overlay. This way, it could keep the rock theme, but also get some more interesting things to look at. To conclude, here are my ratings of the different aspects of the. We should do a rating system on our podcast, Simon.
This is a really good idea, actually.
So they've voted storyline. It must be out of 10. Storyline's 3 out of 10. Exterior decoration 2 out of 10. The queue theming and decoration 6 out of 10. Pre-show 4 out of 10. The ride decoration 4 out of 10. Ride thrills 5 out of 10. The storyline understanding 5 out of 10. The state of the maintenance of the attraction 5 out of 10. And ride capacity in regard to popularity 7 out of 10. Giving the overall attraction an average 4.6 out of 10 for Amanda's Ravenswood. Do you disagree with any of those scores, either of you? Or agree with any of them?
I disagree. Sorry, you go.
Go for it, Alan. Go for it.
I would just say that definitely I'd say it's more thrilling than a 5 out of 10.
Definitely.
Going by,
yes.
by the ride thrills. I mean, if it was a 10, you'd probably be dead. Maybe. And, yeah, I wouldn't say the queues. I don't know, really. Yeah, the exterior decoration should be a 1, really. It should be like the lowest level.
Yeah. But then I don't feel like the storyline is that bad. I mean, I understand. It does feel a bit like a cop-out that it's a roller coaster themed like a roller coaster, but it's still really quite good fun, and at least it's coherent. Whereas there are some roller coasters where like they're trying to get you to believe something's going on, and you're like, no, I'm not buying this at all. Whereas at least this one, you can be like, it's a roller coaster themed like a roller coaster, and it does the job. However easy that job may be.
Right, Simon, you can take your namesake for this one.
So this one's from Simon Marshall, at SkillsChampion2 on Twitter. Right, a subject I love. I've been a fan of coasters for as long as I remember. The Vampire at Chessington many years ago as a kid on a school trip being my first. As much as I like Hyperspace Mountain, I've always preferred Rock and Roller Coaster out of the two. If you forget that the theming is at least 15 years out of date, the cueing is an awesome music history lesson. The bit with the band and the recording studio gives it meaning, and you feel like you're with them. Once you're on the roller coaster, it's fast, it's upside down, and everything a throwaway should be. What should they do with it then? A Marvel re-theme is the obvious choice, but it could be something else like Cool Runnings, the incredible Bolt or Planes. Cool Runnings is an excellent thought. I can't wait to know this is going. Cool Runnings would be amazing, 3 exclamation marks. Or why not re-theme it as something completely new and exciting? Disney own ESPN, and why not re-theme it as a motorsport ride? Anyway, I love it. I'd hate for it to be ruined or watered down, but I guess that'd be too much like hard work. Cheers, guys. Cool Runnings. Now, so what, would you have sort of like Jamaican reggae music as you went around?
Jamaica, we have a bobsled team.
You could have John Candy in the pre-show room, like, coaching you.
This is such a fun idea. Have they ever considered doing this on, Matterhorn bobsleds? Have they ever considered doing that? Just a random, like, Easter egg overlay.
I think so. No.
I've just searched for Cool Running quotes, and my favourite one that's stood out so far is "Rise and shine, it's butt whipping time." So that links in with what NIDLP Geek was talking about before.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other idea I quite like is, of course, Disney do own ESPN, which half the time broadcasts IndyCar, and I'm a really big motorsport fan, so. An IndyCar ride would be fun. Although I'm not sure the Parisians would really appreciate that.
No.
Maybe Formula One. Maybe. Although, Cool Runnings has sold it for me. Let's be honest. We can't top that.
Just imagine if it was Cool Runnings with the music featuring I forgot the name now. Bewitched. That's them.
I was gonna say Bewitched and Cool Runnings.
You could just a mashup, just a total mashup of that. If somebody doesn't create a mashup of Cool Runnings and Bewitched as like some kind of digital overlay for this attraction, then I'll be really upset. If anybody's got Planet Coaster out there and wants to create a rock and roller coaster version with Bewitched and Cool Runnings, then send me the link once you've created it and I'll download it.
If someone does that, I think we'll build them for it. We'll go all out. That's how good this attraction will be.
Yeah, we'll build it. I'm sure Disney will build it as soon as they see it, because it's like Cool Runnings, the IP is just sitting there, and they need to do something with it. Go on, Alan. I'll give you the pleasure
really
of
long
reading
one.
the last email. Yeah, it's not as long as Luke's.
So how do you pronounce this name? Jolien
Van Houtven
at Jojo_Van Houtven. Hi, Andrew and Simon. I mentioned
Alan.
Anna.
And Alan.
Rock and Roller Coaster is one of my favourite attractions in Disneyland Paris. Good music and a thrilling roller coaster with different light shows. What more could you ask? The feeling when you get launched is the best, and on the ride, I love how you can actually see pieces of the track. The fact that it's indoor makes it interesting. When you enter the building, you enter the themed environment. I still awe at those guitars and music memorabilia, and they have stalled out in the waiting line. On the attraction itself, the track is the backdrop for the lights and the music. Simple but effective enough for me. So it really needs the music to function as a good attraction. I've been on silent soundtrackers, or where the music fell out mid-track, and then the ride gets dark. One of my favourite memories of it is actually when it broke down right when I entered the loading platform. The countdown started, but the soundtracker didn't launch. So you saw the faces change of the people who were on it, change from fun to what's wrong here. Lights switched on, and everyone was escorted out of the soundtracker. This is like the evacuation story that you were saying. It was amazing seeing into the launch tunnel, and when, after a little while, they were testing the launch system right in front of my eyes. It was really interesting to see the mechanisms of the launch and the tests they performed. Sadly, I didn't have enough time to see all the tests and ride it when they would open it again, because I had to catch my train back home. I don't mind that they used Aerosmith to brand the attraction. I love the band and the music, though I'm well aware that Aerosmith won't last long anymore. Literally. Marvel will probably take over the attraction in the future. Since none of the Marvel stories actually grab my attention, I'm not kind on it. It would make sense in what we see happening around the globe, and the will of Imagineering to incorporate Marvel stories into the parks, and it will be a good step for the studios, yet a painful one for my heart. But for now, we can still enjoy going down on this coaster. They weren't my words. And sing along to the great Aerosmith music. There you go.
Oh, it was a reference to the roller coaster and the pre-show, but after earlier, we were never going to interpret it like that, were we?
Oh, blimey. Again, everyone seems to... Well, apart from Jolien there said she didn't really like the Marvel idea because she doesn't really like the stories, but a lot of people have agreed that it does need a retheme. Cool Runnings is still the favourite idea on there.
Definitely.
So Simon's got our vote. That's got the magical DLP stamp of approval on there.
That's the best
any
one.
other ideas? Yeah, any other ideas that come across on Twitter or via email, they're just going to go in the bin. Cool Runnings is the one. It's been a while since we had a podcast, so we've had a few iTunes reviews. I think last time we mentioned this about the iTunes reviews. It's now known as Apple Podcasts. Apple have rebranded their podcasts to Apple Podcasts now. And in fact, if you have iOS device, it's automatically installed on your phone now. So there's even more chance of coming across our wonderful podcast episodes. So I'm going to read the first one. You'll be happy to know they're all 5 stars. All the detail 5-star review. Fulco Rocco from UK. I think it's fantastic that this podcast exists to complement all the news podcasts. The danger of shows that focus on one topic is that you could know more than the presenters. That's never the case here. Every episode well researched, presented with passion and magic. Thank you. They obviously don't hear, but what ends up on the cutting room floor, so that's a good thing. Also, that's the reason why we invite people onto our podcast, isn't it, Simon? Because
we don't know what we're all about, so we have to invite people that do.
We ask the questions, and they give us the answers like Alan has been doing today.
Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
What's the next one, Simon?
Next one up, another 5-star review. Brilliant! That's the title. Job done. From the App Guy, 1998. This is such a fun podcast to listen to. Andrew and Simon both do a fantastic job of explaining all the different aspects of Disneyland Paris. And it's so interesting to hear all the information they've researched about the various topics they discuss. Since I discovered this podcast a few weeks ago, I've been eagerly listening to all the episodes so far and can't wait for the next one to be released. Phantom Manor and Eddie Soto episodes are my favourite so far. Keep up the great work, guys. Thanks for the amazing podcast. Thank you, and I totally agree, the Eddie Soto episode is just amazing.
Yeah, I remember... this was probably off air, I think I said this, but I said, now I've got you for one podcast, is there a chance I can grab you for another one in the future? And he seemed very keen on that, so hopefully, if we can think of another topic that he would be full of knowledge about, which is probably quite a lot of different topics to do with Disneyland Paris, and I would love to invite him back on the show, so listen out for that in the future. And hopefully next time, Simon, you could join me for that one.
I would love to.
Go on, Alan. We've got a nice short one for you now.
Thank you. This one is from Peter Meredith from the UK, and it's titled Great DLP Podcast, 5 stars. We've been listening to other DLP podcasts for about a year now, and this is a great addition for us to subscribe to. Informative and fun. Looking forward to the next one.
Yay. Short and sweet. Now this one...
I always worry it's slightly arrogant of us to read our own 5-star reviews, but I like what we just did there, then, was get the other person on the podcast, but like,
yeah.
Alan, why don't you read our 5-star reviews? Tell us how good we are, Alan. Go for it.
I did wonder when I said that. I said, should I read it myself? But the reason I wanted Alan to read it is because I wanted to read this next one myself. Because it seems like we have a stalker, and he lives in the same town as me.
Oh.
So I think this should say a must for anyone planning a visit. 5 stars. Carl is actually Carl McAllister, but it's Carl McCall from the UK. We have just booked our DLP trip for August, so he's obviously been and came back now. Found the DLP podcast a fantastic resource for planning our trip, not to mention the interesting history of the resort and attractions. Very professional and well researched. Nice to hear a local accent on a podcast too, as it seemed Andrew is from my hometown. Highly recommend podcast for anyone going to DLP or a fan of well formatted podcasts. Thank you, Carl. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you exactly where I live in the town because there's only about 20,000 people in our town.
So I thought you were going to finish at 20 then. Like, oh no, there's only 20.
No, yeah. it's quite a small town, so I'm not going to tell you where I live, just in case you come round my house. But if you do want a badge, let me know.
I mean, how good do you think Carl thinks this podcast is if he's gonna come round to your house, Andrew?
Well, we could come round for a live episode, couldn't we? Like live guest interaction. But all jokes aside, thank you for your wonderful reviews, and thank you for your wonderful feedback as well. I think every single review we've had so far is 5 stars. And I don't know if you've seen the new version of the podcast app on Apple on iOS 11. It's a lot easier now to submit reviews, and I've actually just submitted one today myself for our own podcast. That's how easy it is.
So we've gone from getting Alan to read out our 5-star reviews to just writing our 5-star reviews ourselves.
So yeah,
Brilliant.
hopefully on our next episode it should say Andrew Williamson 5-star review. I think I've put something like, this is a very biased review, but I think it's the best podcast out there, something like that. But we'll get you to read it out next time, Simon.
Oh, cheers! Yeah, it would be my honour, Andrew.
We're definitely on around 2.5 hours for this episode, so we better move on to the end of this.
It's been a meaty one.
It does mean that we've had such a great time and there's been so much information, and it was always going to happen when we invited our number one fan and biggest email writer of all, Alan at Cafe Fantasia.
Well,
so before we do get to
biggest email writer.
Yeah, I
Come
think
on.
Luke has the spot.
So let's finish it off. I want to say a big shout out to Holiday Hamster. Every time you mention Magical DLP when booking Holiday Hamster hotels and holidays at Disneyland Paris or other Disney resorts around the world, you do get some added magic. Now, I mentioned this last time, and Martin from holidayhamster.co.uk hasn't told me what the added magic is, but you do apparently get some. So visit www.holidayhamster.co.uk/magical-DLP, and if you mention us on the form when you're asking for some information and prices, it helps you, it helps us to keep this podcast going. Obviously, as well, this is where I sell everything. So badges, we've still got a box full of badges left. If anyone would like a badge which says Magical DLP, and Lake from Lake from Plaza Gardens has just been to Disneyland Paris recently, and he took a picture of one of our badges in the park on his new wife. Congratulations, just got married. His new wife's bag. So thank you very much to Lake there. But if you would like a Magical DLP badge, you can visit our shop at shop.magicaldlp.co.uk. Again, it just goes towards paying for the hosting and such like.
And my trips to Florida.
That is true, yes. Your recce to Florida to look at Rock and Roller Coaster, which I forgot that's what this podcast was about for a second then.
Exactly, yeah.
Also, as well, I'm totally pimping everything out at the moment. I don't know if you've seen Elliot Minto. He was in Disneyland Paris. I think he's actually there now for the DLP run, Run Disney. But he was there a few weeks ago as well, and he had one of our T-shirts on, the Big Thunder Mountain one with the quote on it. If you would like to buy such things as phone covers, bottles, mugs, stickers, you can get them from redbubble.com/people/magicaldlp. I remember saying a few years ago when we started the podcast that I would never stoop to selling merchandise or getting our name out there, but a lot of people had asked me for such things, and it seemed to go quite well, and the cost of hosting the podcast is going up ever so slightly every year. So if you do like what you're listening to, please do us a little favour and purchase a badge or buy a T-shirt. We get a little bit of money, not a lot, but it does help pay for the hosting. Introduce the next podcast, it says next. Now, we had a discussion before we went on air, and if you don't like this suggestion, then your tweets need to be directed to @CafeFantasia. Our next episode is going to be all about Peter Pan's Flight, which obviously has had refurbishment in the last year or two. You're not expecting that one, Alan, because you went, ooh.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
You did say it about 2.5 hours ago, 3 hours ago.
I know, it's been so long ago. I thought that was like last year.
We remember, Alan. We remember.
Yeah. Let us know your opinions. Give us your rating on Alan as well. Will we invite him back? It's entirely up to you. We'll be running a Twitter poll. Yes or no? Actually, well, the options will be yes or yes, because yes, I would love to have Alan back on the show. So, Peter Pan's Flight. Email us at podcast@magicaldlp.co.uk, messages on Twitter, Facebook, or our website, magicaldlp.co.uk. Nobody sent in any audio this time, but don't forget you can record audio on your phones. You've all got a microphone. Hit record. Just send us in 10 minutes. Luke, if you could record your own next time, then we don't have to spend hours reading it out. That would be great. So yeah, record it on your laptop, on your PC, on your tablet, on your smartphone. Send it in, podcast@magicaldlp.co.uk. And the last bit I need to talk about is if you like what we're doing, and even if you don't like what we're doing, you can still leave us a 5-star review and get in touch. The podcast is nothing without you. So before I say goodbye, I'm going to give Alan any final words before we kick him off. Anything you want to say before we go?
No, just thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been nice to come on it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming.
My first podcast appearance.
Way! I'll have to send you a certificate.
And the last.
No, it's not the last. I don't know if you know this, Simon, but privately behind the scenes, I've been trying to get Alan on the podcast for at least a year. Finally managed to get him on, and it won't be the last time.
Well, of course, for the first time, we've done a mammoth long episode as well. So
is this the longest
we've made the most of it.
Probably will be once we put the audio in.
Yeah. 2.5. Yeah, it's a big. In fairness, it's taken us a while.
It's a big one.
It's longer than Lord of the Rings.
And I thought that was a bloody long film.
That can be the strap line for this episode. It's longer than Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
And we could be describing something else, but we are talking about the podcast. Thanks for joining us for episode 17 of the Magical Disneyland Paris podcast. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Tous les systèmes sont prêts?
Let's hear you, Pam. Yeah, sounds good out there.
Sound tracker prêt pour le lancement.
Here we go!
Download complete.
Rise and shine, it's butt whipping time.